Good morning. Oh, no, we have somebody else. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the November 14th, 2023 meeting of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board. Thank you for your patience. Funny story, I normally come up the night before, but I decided today to come this morning. And gentleman to my left had been traveling to Reno back and forth for how many years? 15, 16 years. He assured me that nothing would happen and I would get here on time. Unfortunately, our captain was sick this morning. So we had a plane, but we didn't have a captain. So here we are. So thank you for your patience. We'll begin our meeting. First, if we can get a roll call.
Justice Douglas. Member Merritt is not here today. Dr. Young. Vice Chair Durrett.
Here.
And Chair Guzman-Freilich.
Here. Before we go to public comment, there are a couple, or maybe not, we just have one matter to address. I am saddened to say that our director is going to be moving on. I'm sure that I'm not the only one that feels this way. I have just been working with him since February, and I want to tell you that it has been an absolute pleasure. I have worked in public service most of my my professional career, and you are going to leave some really huge a huge hole that it's going to be hard for somebody to fill. But I'm sure that I'm going to try to make you feel really guilty, but I won't. So this is Director Klimas's last meeting, and I'm sure that we all have some things to say. But before I do that, I wanted to, on behalf of the board and staff, we wanted to present you with this. So there you go. Thank you so much. I'll open it up for everybody to, comment, and maybe if you wanted to say something, or maybe you just want to walk out.
Never turning down an opportunity to say something. I did write it down because I know it'll be tough, but I did want to say a couple of things, and thank you, Chair. And this is my last board meeting. I'll begin to transition out of this role in mid-December. I did the math. This will be my 51st CCB board meeting. So wonderful benchmark, and it's gone incredibly fast. But so the last 4 years have been filled with different challenges and successes and emotions. It's hard to focus on any one event or capture it in only a few words. We were tasked with building a new agency from the ground up, instilling a new sense of integrity and accountability in a nascent industry and its oversight body, and regaining public confidence and trust that Nevada was home to a fair, safe, and well-regulated cannabis marketplace. So I leave this position confident and proud that we accomplished what was asked of us, without exception. That is not to say that there is not more work to be done. This industry is still very much in its infancy. There is a lot of growth ahead of it, and this agency will need to work to match that growth. But we were able to put the foundation in place and equipped ourselves in this state with the right tools to continue to lead. And make no mistake, we are a leader among our peers, and that's something we should all be proud of. I'd also like to pass along a few thank yous. First, I'd like to thank the board for all of your support over the last 4 years, your guidance, your mentorship. You have provided exactly the type of leadership that was needed, and I sincerely appreciate what is many times a full-time commitment to a part-time board position in name only. Justice Douglas, you led the board when we were still very much in the trenches. You made a significant impact on this agency and this industry, and you made a significant impact on me personally. I cherish our time together and look forward to our continued friendship. Chair Guzman-Freilich, you now lead this board. It's been great getting to know you. I've enjoyed our time together, and I'm very confident you will continue to successfully lead this board for years to come. To the rest of the board members, I appreciate all that you've done for us and for me, and for always being engaged and willing to provide your expertise to the many issues we've come across over the years. To the industry, the many stakeholders, attorneys, advocates who support it, thank you for the rich discussions, the healthy debates, but most importantly, for making our team better and sharper every day. I appreciate the friendships I've made, and I admire the work you all do and what many people often don't realize is a very challenging industry. I wish you all the very best. To my executive team, Michael Miles, Dave Staley, Kara Cronkite, Steve Gilbert, Amber Verkler, and Tiana Suter, I thank you for your leadership, your enthusiasm, and your guidance. You can have your Fridays back now. To CCB Legal, we formally adopted you in 2020. You are in every way a member of our family, whether you wanted to be or not. Thank you for your hard work and counsel always. And the hardest part, finally, to the 93 full-time team members who make up the CCB, my admiration of you and the work you do is no secret. You operate with integrity and class and do the right thing, even in the face of criticism or adversity, and you are a shining example of what it truly means to be a public servant. Talking about you and your many accomplishments has been the highlight of this job, and if I had just a small part to play in the culture and atmosphere and family you've all created here at the CCB, I will consider it a top accomplishment in my time as executive director. Leading you all has been an honor of a lifetime, and I will miss you all dearly. So thank you again, members of the board. Thank you to the industry and those who support it. Thank you, Team CCB. I know success will continue to follow this agency and industry, and I'll enjoy watching it every step of the way. So thanks, Chair, for the opportunity to sit.
You're gonna be missed.
Good luck. Any of the board members?
Board members want to make some comments?
I've been working with you for over 3 years now. Thank you for being so welcoming, making my time here so enjoyable. I mean, your accessibility and your knowledge, big shoes to fill with you leaving. You'll be really missed.
Member Durrett, I really hope whoever comes next will sit and argue with me for an hour to an hour and a half at a time. I really appreciate those times. Thank you. And you do leave big shoes to fill with a really big, important state agency. So thank you so much for the work and setting up these systems that can go forward. Thanks, Tyler.
Member Douglas, Tyler, thank you. Thank you on a personal side and thank you on a professional side. You were tasked with putting together an enforcement agency, licensing agency, and working with a brand new board. We had no rails. You had to put the rails in place so we wouldn't come off the rails. I think you did that. As Member Durrett said, you always had the patience and the time to counsel board members as to where we were going, what we were trying to do, and what we were trying to overcome. It is the state of Nevada's loss, but the one thing that is constant in life is change. And I wish you the best with the change that you are about to take, but you will be missed by the board, and you will be missed by those on the other side. I think there was a misconception sometimes in the industry, whether you were their friend or not, but you were trying to make the industry succeed for their own benefit, as well as for the people of the state of Nevada. And for that, I sincerely thank you. I also thank you for getting me involved in the bigger picture, not only what was going on in the state of Nevada, but what was going on in the United States in terms of cannabis and how that affected those of us in Nevada and what we should be doing to protect our interest in Nevada, as well as to improve what we were doing for the public so that they would get away from thinking cannabis was an evil and not something that, if done right, was beneficial financially and individually. So with those thoughts, I cannot say thank you enough.
Thank you. And I know you know how Member Merritt feels. So she couldn't be here with us today, but I know that you know how she feels. Okay, and with that, we're going to open it up to public comment. We have, as you can see, we've got a big big meeting ahead of us, but gaming has informed us that we have to be out of here by 1 p.m. So it's going to be a marathon, but we can do it. So with that, we'll open it up to public comment in the South.
Good morning.
Chair,
Thank you.
just one moment.
Yes.
Sorry, Chair, I have to read in the online joining information real quick.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
To provide public comment via telephone, call 669-444-9171. Enter webinar ID 839-8659-5897, followed by passcode 003570.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Alicia Ashcraft and Maggie McCletchy were officers with the State Bar of Nevada Cannabis Law Section. I wanted to take a moment to report back to the board on a program that Ms. McCletchy referenced a few months ago, and that is the pro bono project that we've been working on for representation of individuals who are maybe facing disciplinary action or agent card issues and who may not be able to afford legal representation. We've now established that program through the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. I brought flyers that are available on the back table where you sign in. If you know of someone who's in need of pro bono legal representation, please pass that information on to them. I wanted to take a moment to just thank Ms. McCletchy for, first of all, coming up with the idea and her work in getting this project off the ground and to become a reality, and mostly to thank all of the attorneys who have already signed up to volunteer their time to provide pro bono representation. Many of them you see here each month. Ms. McCletchy and myself, as well as Amanda Connor, Derek Connor, Paul Larson, Tisha Black, Adam Fulton, Melissa Wade, and many others that I'm probably forgetting, but I just want to thank everyone for volunteering their service to make this project a reality. Thank you.
Maggie McCletchy for the record. I also wanted to congratulate Alicia and the Cannabis Law Section on a very successful CLE conference last week. I wanted to thank Director Cannabis and Board Member Douglas for participating in that. And as one of the attorneys who has had many disagreements with you, but also been able to reach, in some cases, resolution, I wanted to thank you, also Director Cannabis, and to wish you luck.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Hadina Felice, Felice, a small cannabis business owner, and I serve as a board member of the Chamber of Cannabis. On behalf of the community, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation for hosting the workshop on October 18th, which delved into regulations related to packaging, labeling, advertising for cannabis products. Your dedication to supporting industry professionals has not gone unnoticed, and we are grateful for your effort. I'd like to draw attention to Regulation 12.030, subsection 1E, and 12.040, subsection 1J, specifically addressing the date of final harvest. As a consumer myself, I firmly believe that awareness of the final harvest date is paramount. Given the finite shelf life of cannabis products, the freshness of flowers gradually diminishes over time. Including the final harvest date on labels is essential for cultivators to convey this information to purchasers. Without this disclosure, consumers would be left in the dark about whether the flowers they are acquiring are 6 months or 2 years old. The absence of such information could potentially be exploited, leading consumers to mistakenly believe they are purchasing fresh flowers when in reality, they could be over a year old. I respectfully urge the Cannabis Control Board to carefully consider retaining Regulation 12.030 subsection 1E and 12.040 subsection 1J. And last but not least, to Director Climas, thank you for working alongside us in the industry, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comment in the South?
Good morning. For the record, my name is Nicole Bafong. I represent the Chamber of Cannabis as a board of director, as well as Minorities for Medical Marijuana, global nonprofit advocacy organization fighting for equity and empowerment within cannabis communities that have been most disenfranchised and harmed by the prohibition of cannabis. Last month during the workshop, 12.065 was not mentioned. This is the regulation regarding cannabis treated with radiation. I am hoping that this conversation comes up again. I know that there are mixed feelings about this, but the cultivators that spend a lot of money, time, and effort to not have to use radiation to pass tests are not complaining. I cannot find any amendment to this regulation since its implementation in 2020. Why is this not being enforced by the CCB? I'm hoping that we can, I know that there's been some issues and back and forth about labeling, but as a patient and a consumer, I know who doesn't radiate their flower, but that's me as an industry insider. Everybody does not know that. And we have millions of people coming to the state all the time wanting to participate in our cannabis industry. And I think that they have a right to know as well what flower is radiated and which one is not. Also, our secretary, Bree Padilla, has emailed the board regarding the process for individuals that have a criminal background to appeal to the board to work in the industry. Our community has been asking since it was not mentioned, since it has been mentioned in Senate Bill 277. So we're hoping that we can work together with the board to figure out what that process looks like so that we can express that information and share that information with people who are interested in working in the industry. Since that was our civil justice issue, social justice issue in Senate Bill 277. And finally, I just want to thank Executive Director Climas for all the work that you've done over the years since I've been here since 2019, working with you and the board to help create a more transparent and open relationship with regulators. As a consumer and a patient and an advocate, it truly has been a pleasure. So thank you for all that you've done and best of luck to you in your future endeavors. Thanks so much.
There are no additional comments in the South. Then we'll go online. Any
If
comments
you wish
online?
to provide public, if you wish to provide public comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Caller with the last four numbers 4185. Please state your name before providing your comment. Dial *6 to unmute.
Good morning. I think you can hear me. For the record, my name is Abby Kaufman, Kaufmann, and I'm the board secretary for the Chamber of Cannabis. And I'm kicking myself that I'm not there in person to say goodbye to Executive Director Climas today. But it has been a pleasure working with you this past year, and I thank you for what you've done to help get the industry this far. With that out of the way, I wanted to share a few observations and concerns. Firstly, as the CCB continues to consider revisions to regulations, I think it's important that there is consensus and understanding regarding the intention and purpose of these conversations. During the September workshop, legal representatives for the testing labs urged the CCB to clarify the purpose of these proposed revisions and the logic behind these changes. These experts also expressed concerns that aspects of the proposed changes weren't scientifically possible, and a lab operator echoed these sentiments, mentioning that some of the revisions didn't account for technological advances and certain limitations. This lack of clarity and direction was further exemplified during the October packaging and advertising workshop, with the most notable example being what's required on labels versus what's required on packaging. In general, in addition to protecting consumers, any changes to packaging really should just help operators reduce costs and eliminate waste, like period. Secondly, another commonality that arose during the packaging workshop was the fact that the QR code option has actually been around for nearly a year, but there's been no concerted efforts by the CCB to communicate this or provide insight on how to make these changes for operators. And as my colleagues have echoed, we don't want to see the same delays in communication and lack of clarity when it comes to creating a path for ex-offenders to enter the industry as established in SB 277. So in addition to urging the CCB to clearly and proactively communicate with the industry, I want to quickly touch on the idea of accountability. It could be argued that the CCB's main purpose is to keep the industry accountable, and we want that and understand the important role of regulations in protecting public safety. But who's in charge of holding the regulators accountable? I ask because, as noted in recent public comments, Regulation 12.065 regarding cannabis treated with radiation is not being enforced. And as evidenced by this recent legislative session, industry stakeholders are really having to rely upon our state legislators to derive regulation. NRS 678A.450 subsection 4 states that the board shall, by regulation, establish a pilot program for identifying opportunities for an emerging small cannabis business to participate in the industry. This is not a new regulation, but I don't see any regulations outlining this pilot program. And I understand that one of the CAC committees will be looking into market participation, which sounded like an innovative initiative when it was introduced back in September. But like all of the subcommittees and most workshops, this subcommittee is in a direct response to existing statute or new statute. Because the subcommittee on the unlicensed markets required by SB 328, the scheduling subcommittee is required by SB 277. Our state legislator only meets once every 2 years, but the CCB meets every month. And so I will close by asking, what do we have to do to make sure we don't wait until 2025 to see any meaningful changes? Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no additional
other-
public comment online.
Thank you. We'll go to the north in Carson City. Any public comment? Vice Chair Jarrett, do we have public comment in the north?
No.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go on to item 2 on our agenda, which is the meeting minutes. And this time around, we have the acceptance of the October 18th, 2023 minutes of the solicitation of input on packaging, labeling, and advertising regulations and possession and sales limit regulations meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Are there any comments, edits, concerns? And if not, I'll entertain a motion for the passage of these minutes.
Member Douglas, I would move for the approval of the minutes from the October 18th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda. We've got a couple of items on our consent agenda. Item A is the service agreements. I understand.
For the record, Member Douglas, I've asked that we take items A, 1, and 2 separately and call the individuals forward.
Okay, we're going to pull items 1 and 2 of the consent agenda. Item A, which is the service agreements. We'll start with A1, which is Nevada Medical Group LLC. Mr. Staley.
Chair Guzman-Freilich, Vice Chair Durrett, Justice Douglas, Member Merritt, Dr. Young. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 3, which consists of 2 management service or production agreements. Item A is an MSA between Nevada Medical LLC and MOJ NV LLC. This MSA has been entered into to provide for the management of Nevada Medical's production facility, licenses P044 and RP044. CCB staff have reviewed the agreement and found the relationship between the parties appropriate. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Alex Fox and Aaron Shrinida are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Great, thank you and welcome. Do you have affirmative presentations for us today?
Morning, board members. Alex Fox, Director of Operations for Nevada Medical Group. I have Trip Hoffman, COO for Nevada Medical Group. This is Aaron for March. And Aaron, do you want to talk about yourself a little bit and what you'll be doing at the production facility?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I have business in Seattle, Washington. This is my background, so I plan to do the same thing over here in Nevada.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
The questions for me is just, again, when we're coming in and someone is basically coming in and operating a business within a business, I'm always interested in seeing them, what their intention, and do they understand the rules of the road in the state of Nevada, and that even though the named licensee is responsible, your cooperation is needed to make this work, and that there will be no problems allowing representatives of CCB into the facility for inspections, things of that nature, and providing all timely information. I was a little concerned the legalese that's attached was in good stead, but I was a little concerned because when I said, well, what is the licensee getting out of all this? How are they getting paid? I went through the documents and there's no representation. Our investigators reviewed it and said under expenses, money was going to be paid to the licensee, and just to clarify the record, that amount seemed to be $20,000 per month to the licensee as a business expense. But I wanted to get that on the record so there's no misunderstandings. Is that a correct figure?
Board member Alex Fox for the record. Yes, that is correct. Our management agreement, Nevada Medical Group will receive $20,000 per month.
Yeah, normally that's something that's in the boilerplate. And when I went through the operating documents, that wasn't there, and that created a question for me as to what was going on. A secondary question aside, long-term, are you looking to possibly purchase the business or just operate within the business in the future?
Purchase the business.
That's my questions. Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to make clear then that and I'm sure that you are aware that if you do go to purchase the business, that everything has to be approved through the board. In other words, you know, we don't want to see it after the fact, that it's already been, the transaction has already happened, and that you've taken all the steps that are required under the CCB's rules and regulations for purchase of cannabis licensed entity.
Alex Fox, correct. Yes, this is just a management agreement. Under the management agreement, there is an option to purchase, which if he decides to exercise, then we will proceed with the TOI. Also, Nevada Medical Group as a company is not walking away from this. We will be in charge of compliance at all times.
Any additional questions from the board?
Nope. If you're ready for a motion, I'd move for to approve the service agreements provided to us this day.
Okay. Do we have a second? This is on Nevada Medical Group item 1.
So Member Young, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Board members, and Mr. Klimas. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to the second service agreement item, which is Euphoria Wellness LLC and Sunder Desert LLC, Distinction Wellness LLC, Abide Brands Inc., and Stonewater Advisory and Consulting LLC.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley, Chief of Investigations. Item B is a series of production agreements between Euphoria Wellness LLC and Sunder Desert LLC, Distinction Wellness LLC, Abide Brands Inc., and Stonewater Advisory and Consulting LLC. Euphoria recently informed us that the production agreement with Abide has been assumed by Sunder Desert after its acquisition of Abide. The production agreements were brought to the CCB's attention by the Nevada Department of Taxation, and Euphoria has subsequently requested to ask for approval before moving forward. Staff has identified an area of concern regarding these agreements because they appear to be subleases of Euphoria's cannabis licenses. Executives from the parties are here to explain how the agreements work and why they should be allowed to continue. CCB staff have reviewed the agreement and found the relationship between the parties appropriate. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Nicole Lovelock and Darlene Purdy are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have affirmative presentations for us this morning?
Good morning, Nicole Lovelock. I'm an attorney. I represent Euphoria Wellness. With me is Darlene Purdy Skinner, who is the director of Euphoria. On Zoom, we have the three representatives from the service providers who are a party to the three contracts. It is Paul Jacobson, Keith Stitch, and Elisa Lloyd. We are here because they've been operating, and also we understand that there was somewhat of concerns about it being a sublease. It is not a sublease. Euphoria keeps complete control over everything to do with the production facility. Control, management, oversight completely stays within the hands of Euphoria. For example, the inventory control manager, the production facility director, the fulfillment manager, the auditor, the director of compliance, and the managing director herself are all part of Euphoria, and they oversee the operations completely of the production facility. But we're here to answer any questions you may have about these agreements.
Thank you.
And just to make an appearance, Alicia Ashcraft of the law firm of Ashcraft and Barr, specifically just on behalf of Distinction Wellness, as Ms. Lovelock referenced. Alyssa Lloyd is appearing by Zoom, but I am counsel for Distinction Wellness. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Member Douglas, Euphoria Wellness has been a good licensee in the past. I don't think that's going to change. I am concerned for two reasons. One, looking at the boilerplate agreements that have been put forth, there's certain things in there that basically say these separate entities that are coming in are responsible for their space. And I want to make sure they understand that they have to comply. If licensing agents come in for inspections and other things, they're not asked to go away until they can't come in. That bothered me from the tenor of what was in this document. I understand there's other statements about what Euphoria are responsible for, but there's a lot of specifics as is saying, these are my four walls, I'm in control, I'm operating this. Also want to make sure that for the financial end, that sufficient information will be provided to Euphoria within what's called for the 4 times a year financials, so that we won't get into a tie-up when CCB does spot checks and auditing of what's on the books, that we get cooperation. This is a new phase. And the last thing, if you can comment on it, I would like to have our agents talk to the leadership of the groups that are coming into under Euphoria, so we kind of have a feeling of who these people are. We know who Euphoria is. We don't know who this other group is who's coming in, what their background is. It's not a full-fledged licensing request of investigations, but just some general things, who they are, what their history, where they come out of. I know 2 come out of Southern California, so I don't know what their activity was or was not in California or someplace else. So if it seems protectionist, yes, it is protectionist. I want to make sure that the cannabis operation in Nevada is run per our rules and regulations, and we welcome new players. And as you talked about, innovative process, but we still, our obligation is to kind of know who's in the industry. So if you have any comments,
I do, Your Honor, and Euphoria shares the same concerns, and they've taken great measures to address those concerns and make sure they're not concerns at their production facility. If you look at the agreement, there are provisions in here that talk about cooperation. There are provisions in here that talk about that they have to abide by the law, the regulations, state, local, every part. And there's also parts in here that say that it's void if the regulations change, and then it has to be amended to comply with the laws. There has to be complete cooperation among anyone that is providing a service within Euphoria, and they've taken great pains to ensure it. And also, as it was stated, Rove, which is Stonewater Advisory Consulting, has been in since 2020, and there's never been an issue. And that was back when it was Department of Taxation, and they have complied and they continue to comply, as do the new service providers as well. And Euphoria has never had an issue with any of the inspections that have happened in the last year since they've had these type of providers there. And the reason that they're in different areas within the production facility, still with under Euphoria, is based upon the type of innovative service they provide. For example, the gummies in the kitchen, the extractors would be in the lab, and all under the compliance, and all based upon the agreement have to comply with the state agencies, the local agencies, all regulations. And if not, per the agreement, it can be terminated on the spot if there's not compliance with laws and regulation.
part of calling you forward is just making sure that everyone understands that, and Euphoria understands that it's not a defense to kind of say the dog ate my homework, that these folks who are coming in, running these businesses within their enterprise did this. They are the licensee, and ultimately they are responsible. And they need to understand that and make sure that they hold the folks that are coming in to do production to the letter of their agreement in terms of the cooperation.
They do understand that, and they've been doing it and will continue to do it in the future, Your Honor.
That's my questions. I don't know if I need something formal or not when we get to it to ask, just allow our folks to have a conversation with the folks who are coming in to run their businesses within the business.
Well, and I'd like to hear from the operators if I could. I know they're online, and I'm sure you're excited to come on board. And so let's hear a little bit about who you are and what your goals are. And
Understood. They're all on Zoom right now.
yes.
Darlene Purdy for the record. Did you want to address anyone individually, or would you like them each to just tell you a little bit about their operation?
Sure. Just, quickly, because I know we don't get, I know our staff may or may not have had some conversations, but it's nice for the board because we don't fully vet, the individuals. It's nice to kind of hear from them and see what their goals and aspirations are and coming into, your facility and running it.
Understood. We can start with Paul Jacobson. He is from Stonewater Advisory and Consulting.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Paul Jacobson. I'm the president of Stonewater. We've been operating at the Euphoria facility since 2020. We primarily make vape-related products. We also make some other. We make a beverage type and some pre-rolls. We started in California. We hold licenses here. We've always been in good standing with the state and our city, Costa Mesa in Orange County. Additionally, we sell Rove products in 9 total states across the United States. We follow this model where we operate under somebody's license in all states except California, where we hold our own. We take compliance incredibly serious. Euphoria is best in class in also taking compliance very serious. I think our track record in their facility in being available for audits and the results of those audits speaks to how serious both parties take that. We fully understand that this is Euphoria's facility, Euphoria's license, and our relationship with the license holders is one of our most important assets. We've had a great experience selling our products in Nevada thus far, and very excited to continue to be a part of the cannabis community in Nevada for years in the future. I'd also like to point out that we hold a marijuana support business license issued by Clark County. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
We also have Keith Sitch, who's from Thunder Desert LLC.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, Keith Sitch. I'm co-founder and president of Sunderstorm. Our headquarters is in the city of Los Angeles. We're currently operating in California, Nevada, and Massachusetts. We've been with Euphoria since middle of 2021. One of the reasons why we love them as a partner is that they're really picky about compliance, and we are really picky about compliance ourselves. So we have our own licenses in California. We're the fourth largest edible brand in the nation. So we've got a really big business and a big facility in Los Angeles. We're regulated locally in LA by LA DCR, the Department of Cannabis Regulations. They actually bring a group through once a quarter because they consider our facility to be state-of-the-art, clean, compliant, like really probably one of the best edibles facilities in the nation. So LADCR, who's probably closest to us, knows that we're a very compliant and clean operation. We've really enjoyed being in Nevada. We know that the tourists that come in is significant. We love having our brand be really on a national scale because Las Vegas is really almost like a national city. And we look forward to being a good compliant member, teaming up with Euphoria for the years ahead.
Thank you.
And we also have Ms. Ashcraft, who's counsel for Distinction Wellness.
And I'll just turn it over to Ms. Lloyd. She can answer any of your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you to the board. Alyssa Lloyd for the record. I am the LLC Director for Distinction Wellness and franchisee owner of Didiri, Nevada. Didiri, Nevada is a franchise operation of Didiri Corporate, which is based out of Colorado, who has been in the cannabis industry since 2017 in the state of Colorado and has a very clean record with Colorado Med, as it's referred to there, the equivalent to CCB in Nevada. Has had, like I said, a clean record, no issues there whatsoever, and has also been a leading partner in the state. We're very excited to be in Nevada and to be in Euphoria's facility. We have been a partner of Euphoria's since first quarter of this year, and it's been a very wonderful relationship. We're bringing solventless products that are very unique to the Nevada market, focused on high quality, clean inputs to get high quality, clean outputs to the end consumer. I'm from Las Vegas, so it being in Nevada means a lot to me to bring it to my home community. That's all that I have for now. So any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Chair Guzman for David Staley for the record. For the board members' knowledge, when we have a management services contract type arrangement that we put before you, the other parties do undergo a background and suitability check, and we also do check with how they are operating in the other jurisdictions that they're licensed. What we provide to you is more of a technical description the contracts that Euphoria and the other parties enter into, but that other work is completed.
From my standpoint as a board member who has to be one of the voting members on the license, it would be helpful that we get some kind of information about them also, so we know what we're approving. To Ms. Lloyd, you are a unicorn. You are, I said unicorn, as you looked and said, what is he talking about? You are a woman and you are a person of color in the industry. So that is unfortunately an oddity these days in Nevada. So I wish you good luck. And Mr. Staley, thank you for that information that's already been done, the overview. But as I said, we as board are kind of flying blind in terms of that and listening to their backgrounds. They all seem to be established. And again, as I mentioned about Director Klimas, we are interacting in a national market, and it's nice to know what our players are doing and how much they are involved and how that may affect our marketplace. So.
Okay. Additional comments from the board members?
This is Member Young. I had one question about compliance. Now with Euphoria, is your compliance officer overseeing the other entities, or do they each have their own compliance officer that then reports to Euphoria's compliance? I just trying to understand that a little bit better.
Darlene Skinner for the record. We have compliance director at the facility. We also have, as an employee of Euphoria, the director of production who is in charge of compliance on the ground floor. We also have the layers of internally with each group. They have their own inventory managers and compliance directors as well as our compliance attorney.
Great.
Many layers.
Thanks.
Okay. Any additional questions? If not, we'll bring it back to the board for a vote.
I have a question, Member Durrett, for the record. I see this is service agreements, but these were originally, this area of the agenda was management service agreements, right? So are we broadening that? I guess it's for Dave, because this isn't a management service agreement, right?
Darlene Skinner for the record. No, it's not. They do not manage our operations. They just work as servicers within the operation.
So service production agreement, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Staley, I know you're dying.
Chief Staley for the record. Member Durrett, the reason that these were brought up is they were pre-existing from under taxation. And when they came to the attention of our agents, part of it was making sure that they didn't have an involvement, either a participation in revenue or a element of control. They were presented before the board because of the appearance of sublease agreements. And I know in the past, this board has had a concern with third parties come in and simply operating under the umbrella of the licensee while not being licensed themselves. This was presented for the board, to the board for clarity and because of those past concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just add to the comments before that Euphoria is an exemplary facility. It's one that new people to regulation go tour to get ideas on how it's done right, how it's done in a compliant manner. When I started teaching cannabis law at the law school, I went there to really get some kind of some explanations on how things work in practice. So thank you to them. If I had my druthers, we wouldn't have them. I love having them here, but I don't think that they should go through the time and expense of explaining to us these agreements if they're not management service agreements, but I do love having them here while they're here, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments before we take a vote on this? Okay.
No, thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you for being on Zoom, and it's very helpful for us to hear your background and your stories, and I appreciate that. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board then. If there are no additional questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
Member Douglas, for the record, I would make a motion for approval of Euphoria Wellness LLC's service agreements, P089 and RP089 for the record.
Is there a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item B of the consent agenda. And what we have here is basically the approval to extend final inspection deadline we've got 22 entities, and basically what these are entities with a license that for one reason or another are not operational. A lot of them have to do with moratoriums. And so do we have any members that want to pull any items from this extension list, request for extension list? If not, then I'll entertain a motion for the approval to extend the final inspection deadline on these 22 items.
Chair, I'm sorry. Can we pull agenda item 3B1?
Yes, and that, which item was that?
Eureka New Gen Farms.
Number 1. Okay. Then we'll pull out 1 and we'll handle that on a separate motion. But with regard to items 2 and 22 of the consent agenda, item B, do we have a motion? And I know we've got time to consider whether we want to extend this out for either 9 or 12 months. So if your motion could please.
Douglas, for the record, I would make a motion to approve extension for 12 months of items 2 through 22.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any discussion on this motion?
Member Douglas, just going through this list of groups, we have those that are in jurisdictions that have lifted moratoriums. We have those who were impacted by COVID. We have those that have issues as to specific locations. So we have the gamut of things, but we wish the licensees well, and hopefully the next time we see them, they will be moving forward.
Yeah, and this is Member Young, just as a comment. I mean, when we addressed this similar issue about a year ago, there was actually 26 because it was A to Z. I just remember that specifically. But it was interesting because there were a lot of counties who had moratoriums that now you can see how the state is changing. A lot of them are starting to lift these moratoriums, and in the last year, you can see how much the state has moved on, and that's pretty exciting to see.
Yes, that is. And for staff, I know we're on the comments on the motion that we have on the table, but just for staff at some point, we could probably organize it so that those items that have moratoriums that have not been lifted, that there's really nothing that these entities can do about that. We could probably do something a little bit different. So we've got these buckets, and maybe treat that bucket differently, and maybe, give it more time than the ones where the moratoriums have been lifted and they're basically in motion to get these opened. And then there's another bucket for the other. But for now, this is how, we've been handling, and we're moving forward, and it's good to see a reduction at least. So with that, any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry. Can I make a comment? Member Durrett, for the record, there were a few items I had meant to pull. Director Klimas, I'm going to need you to inform your successor that he or she's probably going to have to help me with things like email and internet. I accidentally emailed them to myself. So there's a couple of items I wanted to pull. I didn't do it successfully, so I'm not going to ask to pull them today. But I think the handful of companies that don't have a location yet, and it's not because of a moratorium or a lawsuit, that I would not be in support of extending those next time. This just didn't work out for them. So if you're one of those few that doesn't have a location and you weren't caught up in massive litigation or a moratorium, then I would not be in favor of another extension.
And maybe that would be another bucket too, another item of the ones without location that we can handle separately. Okay. All on the motion for approval of items 2 through 22 with a 12-month extension. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now we're going back to item number 1, which was pulled. Vice Chair Durrett, this is Eureka New Gen Farms LLC. Do we have somebody representing Eureka New Gen Farms? Okay. We've got Steve.
Chief Gilbert, you can give a quick
Thank you,
summary.
Chair. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Steve Gilbert, Chief of Administration for the record. New Gen was issued a conditional medical cultivation, production, and adult use retail store license within the Eureka jurisdiction. New Gen reports that the lawsuit it filed with Eureka County on October 2022 is still pending, and New Gen reports it will be moving forward with the lawsuit. CCB staff verified Eureka County Ordinance Title 6, Chapter 60.5050, prohibiting medical and recreational cannabis establishments on all lands within the county remains in place. I'm available for any questions, and Katie McConnell and Michael Tangreen are present today via Zoom to address any questions you may have as well.
Thank you. Ms. McConnell, do you have a presentation for us this morning?
Yes. My name is Katie McConnell. I'm an attorney representing Eureka New Gen Farms, and present with me is Michael Tangreen, the owner of Eureka New Gen Farms. Chair and board members, thank you for allowing us to appear via Zoom since we're so far out in the middle of nowhere. It is a lot more convenient. So thank you for allowing us to present this way. The last time we were here in front of the CCB regarding an extension, we discussed the fact that we had filed a lawsuit against Eureka County seeking declaratory relief for their statute that we claim is invalid, as it is an all-out ban or moratorium on cannabis establishments and is not directly related to zoning or otherwise. Since that time, we've actually made a lot of progress with Eureka County, because when we came here before, they would not talk to us. Since the time we were last in front of the CCB, we filed the lawsuit, and shortly thereafter, and after some early litigation discussions, we participated in a confidential settlement conference with Senior Judge William Maddox in Eureka. While that settlement conference was not entirely successful on the merits of the case, what did happen is Eureka County allowed Eureka New Gen Farms to present a plan to the Eureka County Commission. Now, previous to this lawsuit being filed, Eureka County had told Eureka New Gen Farms that they would not let us on an agenda with the county commission until federal law had changed. So we presented in November of 2022 to the Eureka County Commission. And in fact, it was a civil and productive meeting. We presented for about 2.5 hours and presented a plan that would allow Eureka New Gen to operate in Eureka County, north near Carlin, which is in Elko County, and would basically adopt a business license proposal similar to Elko County. Despite ultimately denying the plan that we presented, the Eureka County Commission provided feedback and in fact stated on the record that they would be willing to reconsider another item if we could show that there was public support of cannabis in Eureka County. Now, it's important to note that Eureka County is a total population of about 1,800 people. There are about 780 registered voters and 4,715 square miles. So it's a very big but lowly populated county. Their denial at that time was based upon the fact that Eureka County voters had voted against the legalization of cannabis in 2014 on the ballot. But one commissioner at that meeting stated that his decision was based upon personal beliefs. And in fact, he said that he promised his wife he wouldn't vote for this. So since that time, we have kind of switched gears and tried to work with Eureka County on getting something that would work for both Eureka New Gen and that Eureka County would approve to lift their moratorium. At that meeting, multiple times since, Eureka County Sheriff, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, Jesse Watts, has expressed his support for Eureka New Gen Farms to open their facilities. Additionally, the Chief of Police of Carlin, which is the closest city to where the proposed facility would be, has also publicly addressed his support and sent a letter in. At the meeting, there were no persons in opposition to our proposal. In fact, the only people who appeared were in favor of our proposal. So since that time, we have worked to gain public support of cannabis within Eureka County. Eureka New Gen has attended public meetings. We have circulated petitions. We have gone to big public events in Eureka County, such as the Eureka County Fair, to educate and inform voters and residents of the plan of Eureka New Gen and hear their concerns, as well as educate them on what Eureka New Gen plans to do. We've also been more recently working with the Crescent Valley Town Board to garner their support to take back to the commission, and we have requested to be placed on another Eureka County Commission agenda for the new data to reconsider their request. Since the time Eureka New Gen was granted its original provisional certificates, every year my client pays the fees to the state, files his annual renewals, and continues to hold his place. He is the only licensee holder for Eureka County, and so we would respectfully request that the commission continue to grant another one-year extension, allow us to work with the county and try to get a resolution that works for both of us. With respect to the litigation, it is still pending, but we have basically tried to address this in a collaborative manner with the county versus just the fight, even though we still have it after that settlement conference with Judge Maddox. And I'm available to answer any questions, or Mr. Tangren is as well.
Okay. Any comments from your client?
I just feel that it is a brand new system and we're trying to work the kinks out, and we are definitely, we really want to be a part of the cannabis community. We've done everything according to regulations and compliance, and we are moving forward, and we believe we're getting some good traction.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board members?
Member Durrett, thank you for the summary. That was really helpful. What is the status of the litigation? Is it scheduled for trial?
It's not scheduled for it is not scheduled for trial. We basically have stayed further actions pending the possible settlement with the county directly. One of the big holdups between us and the county previously was the county commissioner, the chair of the county commission was very against everything that we ever brought, would send us letters. He has now been replaced. The replacement of that commissioner is a person who will talk to us, who has met with me privately, who will communicate. So essentially we have agreed to work on, instead of forcing the lawsuit, see if we can come up with something outside the lawsuit, more along the lines of settlement.
Thanks.
Vice Chair Durrett, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would ask that if anything moves in the lawsuit that you notify the CCB, the board members, and I'd move to approve the 12-month extension.
Okay, we have a first. Is there a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Was that an aye? Yes. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are done with our consent agenda, and that brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which is a consideration of approval for a conditional license for a cannabis consumption lounge. And we have one item under that agenda section, which is CLS Holding USA, Inc.
Chair Guzman, Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 4, which consists of one request for approval of a conditional license for a cannabis consumption lounge. If this board approves conditional licensure, the applicant will still need to complete necessary local approvals and final inspection by the CCB's Inspection and Audit Division before it can open for business. Item A is to request for approval from CLS Holdings USA Inc. for a retail attached consumption lounge under application number ACON A22000068. CLS operates the Oasis Cannabis Dispensary in Las Vegas and plans to operate its consumption lounge, appealing to individuals and special private events. CLS has submitted all information required to move to a conditional license status. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Michael Glover and Jamie Dixon are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Do we have affirmative presentations, and good morning to you?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Guzman-Freilich and the board. My name is Michael Glover, and I'm an attorney representing the holding company CLS Holdings USA Inc., as well as the subsidiary entity Serenity Wellness Centers LLC, which is a licensee and that operates the dispensary, Oasis Cannabis Dispensary. We are here today to seek approval of the conditional license for retail attached consumption lounge to be located at 1800 South Industrial Boulevard, which is a centrally positioned location right off the Las Vegas Strip and in fairly close proximity to the Las Vegas Arts District. I know that you've had some material that's already been presented to you, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I did want to just mention a couple of things that I think are particularly relevant to the application. Serenity and the Serenity entities, actually I should pause for a moment. Jamie Dixon to my right, Chief Compliance Officer, and Dominic Monaco to my left, who is the, not actually sure what the official title is, Chief Science Officer, and runs the production facility. The Serenity is comprised of 3 separate corporate entities, all under the CLS umbrella. It's a vertically integrated cannabis company that has the cultivation, production, and retail dispensary elements to it. It has been operating in the city of Las Vegas since 2015, one of the original operators, one of the original licensees, and therefore has a fairly long and established track record in the community. It does have a reputation for the quality of its operations, the quality of its brands, and I think the quality of its participation in the communities that it serves. The Serenity entities are very proactive in community events and causes, focusing on veterans and underserved portions of the population. It is a corporate entity, the social conscious, and I think that's very important, particularly in the location that it's at. That sensibility is also carried over into the lounge concepts. The composition of those who visit the Oasis Cannabis Dispensary is roughly about 80% local and 20% tourist. And we're anticipating that those percentages will carry over into the lounge. I say that because this is not a lounge that is really designed to be an entertainment spot for out-of-town tourists. It is a lounge that is designed to be a safe, secure, enjoyable spot for the cannabis community locally, primarily, and to both educate and enrich that community in an environment where it is no longer stigmatized, and allow people to enjoy not only the cannabis products, but those who share similar interests and philosophies about cannabis consumption. The lounge, which will be adjacent to Oasis Cannabis Dispensary, is about 3,700 square feet of interior space with a 300 square foot patio, covered patio. The interior space is roughly divided 2/3 into smoking section and 1/3 into a non-smoking section. The lounge will be operated by the seasoned veteran and stable team at Serenity Wellness Centers, which currently operates the Oasis Cannabis Dispensary right next door. And Serenity will be remodeling its current administrative offices into lounge space. And they've already relocated their administrative staff to a new location to accommodate that remodel. The lounge, as I had mentioned before, will operate as a private event space that can be rented, fully staffed private cannabis events. So it's not a space that will be receiving traffic all day long and into the evening. It's a private event space, and those events can be categorized into two different tranches. One are sort of corporate events, booked events by entities external to the lounge. And the other tranche is those events that are sponsored by the lounge itself. So those might be sporting event, Super Bowl viewing parties, open mic night, dancing, local artists presentations, art installation presentations. It might be poetry readings. I mean, I suppose anybody who's been into a really nice coffee house can sort of imagine the opportunities that might be there, but as well as dancing and things like that. It has a maximum capacity of 100 individuals at a time. That includes staff. So you're talking about roughly 90 patrons on the premises at any given time that are not working there. So it's a relatively small, intimate space that is really designed to sort of foster this clean, safe, secure, fun environment. It is a place to enjoy cannabis with old friends. It's also a place to meet new friends in this community and share some laughter, hopefully, some memories, build some relationships. This is a community-based, community-focused enterprise. Serenity has a long track record in this community. It understands the cannabis community. It understands the cannabis business, which it has operated very successfully here through the trials and tribulations of COVID, and even through the market fluctuations that can sometimes be very challenging. Having already run that gauntlet, Serenity and CLS, the parent corporation, find themselves in a stable, profitable condition and ready to sort of move on to this next stage of extending that vertically integrated business into this more sort of entertainment focused area. Fundamentally, having these lounges as areas where people can gather rather than at the casinos or at the airport. When I fly in, I wonder if there's a party going on sometimes just at the airport there. And this is an opportunity to aggregate those people who want to share that cannabis experience in an environment where they can feel comfortable and safe. They can feel validated and empowered to enjoy this experience together, and that they can leave the venue also, with the same courtesies and the same considerations that would apply if they had gone to a bar or they had gone to a casino, something like that. So we are hopeful that we can get the approval from the CCB today. We have already initiated the process with the City of Las Vegas for the special use permit and expect to be in front of them at the December 20 City Council meeting, or what we are hoping will be final approval there. And once we have both your blessing, City of Las Vegas blessing, we will move forward immediately with the remodeling of the space. That's all I have, although I would be remiss if I stepped away from this podium and did not acknowledge Rachel Prince, who is the inspector that was assigned to us, for her incredibly conscientious and professional approach to our application. It was genuinely, although her job is to vet our application, she did it with a considerable amount of class and courtesy, and we really appreciated that process. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Any additional comments? No? Okay, we'll bring it to the board then for questions. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Glover, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering if there's been any glitches working with the city. I know that the location is over on Industrial, not on the main boulevard, but, and you were talking in terms of community base. I was wondering if there's a theme to attract food, music, or, because I know you talked about welcoming and kind of a place to gather, but besides the cannabis, what might attract people to come? And I know it's difficult because no licensee, this is still a untested water, so to speak. They're trying to figure out how to make this work.
Yes. Well, I think you have sort of covered the entirety of the considerations, right? It is a new enterprise in an entirely new area. I will say this as a starting point. CLS and Serenity are excited about the opportunity to explore the possibility. The ultimate outcomes, I don't think any of us know. What I will say is that the scale of the project is such that it will not financially tax the underlying corporate structure. Because it is a booked event space, or it is a space where the bookings will be controlled by the lounge itself. You have a greater amount of control, both in staffing and in sort of building your economic model of how it will operate. What will ultimately attract is, I think, the fact that Serenity has built such a strong brand within the community it serves. So as an example, in addition to canvassing all of the neighbors in the area, personally canvassing, Ms. Dixon and Mr. Monaco actually went on building to building, place to place, met with each of the other tenants in the building space that currently occupied, and about a 200-foot radius around that building, and introduced this concept to the neighbors, talked to them about what was going to happen, and answered their questions, and provided site plans and even the business plan that we had put together as part of our application process. This was really designed to get stakeholder buy-in to what we were doing in the community there. Above and beyond that, we also had a poll conducted at Oasis Cannabis Dispensary, where we asked the patrons who were coming into the dispensary, how do you feel about this? Is this something that you would be excited about having here? That poll, which we ran for a couple of weeks, had 184 positives and 2 negatives. I don't know who those 2 negatives were, but I actually like the idea that there might be people who come in and say, you know what, I come into the dispensary, but that doesn't mean I'm going to come into a lounge. That's okay. But what it did affirm for us is that there is an existing population of people who might be really interested in coming in and visiting what we have to offer, provided what we have to offer is interesting to people. So whether it is that sort of open mic experience, or a sporting event watch party, or it is music, or it is open mic, I think only time will tell us sort of what works and what doesn't work.
Do you have a parameter of what your hours might be?
The hours are 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. But of course, that depends on whether something is booked. To be honest, all that reflects is an interest in having the maximum opportunities to events, whether it's day or night. The anticipation is most of the events will happen on Friday and Saturday evenings. That will be the predominance of events.
I guess in the million-dollar question, are you trying to be open for National Finals Rodeo or the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think Super Bowl 2024 would be more realistic, but the reality is there are a few gauntlets to run, and the good news is we are proactively running them. So.
Thank you.
Additional questions from board members? Anything up north? Okay, hearing none, then we'll bring it back to the board for a motion and deliberation.
This is Member Young. I'll move that we approve agenda item 4A, the conditional license for cannabis consumption lounge for CLS Holdings.
Member Douglas, I'll second Member Young's motion as the licensee attempts to go boldly where no one has gone before.
Great. We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you and good luck.
Good luck to you.
Okay. Now that brings us to our item 5, which is the transfers of interest. We've got 4 items under this topic, starting with item A, which is again CLS Holdings USA for possible action.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 5, which consists of 4 transfer of interest or TOI applications. Item A is a TOI application CLS Holdings USA Inc., which just received conditional approval for its consumption lounge. TOI number 2300003 was filed on February 28th of 2023, requesting approval for existing institutional investors to acquire ownership in CLS pursuant to the conversion of certain warrants and convertible debentures. These conversions resulted in the dilution of 5 existing owners, removal of an owner, and an increase over 5% of certain institutional investors. CLS has also requested a waiver of NCCR 5.110 pursuant to 5.112. If approved, the requirements for prior board approval of transfers of less than 5% of CLS ownership will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.112 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limits CLS's 5.112 waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. An area of concern was developed during this investigation because the conversion of the warrants and convertible debentures and transfer of ownership interests was completed during September of 2022. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that James Dixon, Michael Glover, and Amanda Connor are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you and welcome back. Mr. Glover, do you have a presentation for us or maybe explaining what these transfers hold?
Yeah, I'm going to let Amanda take the lead on this and add to whatever I can.
Okay, perfect. I didn't recognize you up there. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairwoman Guzman Freilich, members of the board, Amanda Connor from the law firm of Connor & Connor this morning on behalf of CLS Holdings. As Mr. Staley indicated, the Chief Compliance Officer, Jamie Dixon, and their corporate SEC attorney, Michael Glover, are in attendance in Las Vegas. Also, it is my understanding that via Zoom, the CEO and president, Andrew Glashow, is viewing. As Mr. Glover covered in the previous item, CLS has been involved in the cannabis industry in Nevada for several years since acquiring the Serenity entities, and compliance has been one of their utmost items of importance. As noted, the Chief Compliance Officer is there as the company representative. I think it's important to understand the timeline of what's happened, giving rise to the area of concern. There were conversions of debentures and warrants, but prior to that, in April 26th of 2022, you guys may be familiar and may recall that CLS was in front of the board and was approved for a transfer of interest at that time by the Cannabis Compliance Board. At the time of that approval, these existing debentures and warrants were already in place and therefore should have been a part of the suitability review. The next thing that happened was in After the debenture and warrants were converted in October of 2022, CLS took upon itself to notice the CCB as required by regulation pursuant to 5.11010E that there was a change in shareholders over 5% for 45 consecutive days. Therefore, I do think it's important for the record to note that CLS was the one that first noticed the board of this. In February of 2023, after the notice had been sent, Chief Investigator Staley reached out to CLS and asked for a written response as to why the conversions were not an unapproved TOI, and also gave the company a deadline to submit transfer of interest documents. To be clear, the company is not of the position that this was an unapproved TOI or a transfer of interest, but did, in an abundance of caution and to cooperate with CCB staff and board, they submitted the TOI documents as requested, and laid out several arguments as to why an unapproved TOI did not occur. It is my understanding that you board members have that letter and the details around that, so I will not go into significant detail into it, but there are some main arguments as to why an unapproved TOI did not occur. First, the ownership interests in the licenses have not changed. They are still held by the Serenity entities, which is then owned by an intermediary entity, which is then owned by the publicly traded company, CLS. Two, CLS, the publicly traded company, followed the regulations, which talks about the requirements for when there's a change in shareholders going above 5%. And that is found in NCCR 5.11010E. And they sent the notice as soon as they became aware that someone had gone above 5% for 45 consecutive days. Three, the exercise and conversion of these warrants did not constitute transfers. And four, as discussed before, the CCB was aware or should have been aware of such debentures and warrants during its prior suitability investigation, which was approved by the board in April of 2022. As many of you know, we have had a lot of discussions that there probably needs to be more regulation or policies, and there needs to be a policy discussion by the board on how to handle publicly traded companies. Unfortunately, right now, our regulations just aren't well developed to identify every possible scenario. And given the current market of cannabis establishments, more such warrants, debentures, or other such instruments are going to be needed by these businesses to continue operations. Therefore, I ask that the board approve the waivers. Again, it's CLS's position that a transfer did not occur or an unapproved transfer did not occur. Therefore, I'm not sure I'm asking you to approve a transfer, but I do want the waivers approved. And as noted, they would need to be approved because we're back on the agenda. And I would ask and encourage that we have that discussion that has been brought up numerous times about development of further regulation relating to publicly traded companies and how they deal with their routine operations, their notices to the SEC and corresponding notices to the CCB. As I indicated at the beginning of my presentation, Michael Glover, who is their counsel, SEC counsel, is here. He can answer specific questions regarding what occurred or the companies involved if the board should have such questions. And I am also available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Mr. Glover?
A couple of very quick observations. One is that while the statute talks about individuals, entities holding 5% or more of the stock company for a defined period of time, the trigger event on this particular inquiry happened not because individuals or entities went above 5%, rather because they dropped below 5%. It was the sort of this small seismic shift in shareholding interest that was the tripwire that sent a signal to the CCB that there might be something here worthy of an inquiry. That tripwire was caused because of the forced conversion of debt to equity through these debt instruments called debentures. I can go into as much detail as you would like about those, but there are three entities, three funds, which hold a significant amount of stock in CLS. Those funds held these debt instruments, and when the company forced them to convert debt to equity, it caused a significant increase in the number of shares that they held, and it had a dilutive effect for everybody else who was a shareholder, thereby dropping one shareholder who was above 5% to below the 5% threshold level. And that's what got this discussion going. Those funds, if I can be proactive in addressing, I think, what is on a lot of people's minds. And I want to also say that Chief Staley had a conversation with me and with Amanda, and expressed during that conversation a real genuine interest in trying to understand the mechanics of these instruments and what it meant. And I do want to acknowledge the fact that the dialogue that he's engaged me in anyway has been extremely productive and proactive. It really is more about learning than it is about accusing. And so we have tried our best to help in that educational process. In the cannabis space, as you all know, cannabis companies do not have access to conventional markets, capital markets. So you wind up raising capital with instruments that are sometimes creatively constructed and not necessarily conventional. In this particular case, when CLS went out to the markets to raise capital, it did so through these debentures. And these debentures had a very unique provision in them that was very pro-CLS. And that unique provision is that CLS could force the debt holder to convert debt to equity in the event CLS felt it was in their best interest to do so, because the crushing burden of servicing the debt was destabilizing the company. So in September of 2022, CLS made the decision to go ahead and force that conversion, thereby reducing the debt of the company from $20 million to $8 million in one fell swoop. But as I indicated, when it did that, the shareholding interest of these funds went up. To give you some perspective on the funds, there are three of them, two related. One called Navy Capital Green Fund, which holds 5.9% of the shares of the company. Navy Capital is a $190,640,000 fund, and it's a pooled investment fund, sometimes referred to as a hedge fund. So it tends to invest in markets that have higher returns and a little bit higher risk. The debt that Navy Capital Green Fund holds of CLS is $950,000, $950,446. As a percentage of the overall portfolio that it manages, CLS represents just under less than 0.5% of that portfolio. Navy Capital Green Co-Invest Fund, which is a similar management group, but an entirely separate fund, holds $1.8 million of CLS debt. It is a $43,725,000 fund. CLS makes up 4% of their investment portfolio. And then thirdly is Tribeca, which owns 18.3% of the stock of CLS. Tribeca is a $3 billion fund. It primarily invests in equities, credit markets, global resources, carbon, some fairly sophisticated transactional things, and it has a very tiny investment in the cannabis industries. CLS at $3,700,000 of debt to that company makes up just over 0.1% of that portfolio. That's significant in all of these cases, because I think the thing that would concern me and undoubtedly concerns the CCB board is those situations, somebody is moving into cannabis space and looks like they are attempting to take control of an entity, or you're concerned about that a individual or a corporate entity or a fund has this desire to control a cannabis entity, and you want to know more about who they are and what their background is. And so, as I indicated, you could Google each of these entities. These are major funds, and they operate around the world. In our case, though, I wouldn't say that we are insignificant, completely insignificant or unknown, because we do have contact with these funds, of course. But to say that they have any desire to actually operate or control or influence a CLS would be a gross overstatement. They are as passive as an investor could possibly be, and at 1/10%, we don't get a lot of their attention, even on the most fundamental things like, voting at the time of the annual shareholder meeting. That takes some effort just to get participation sometimes, because we aren't a major concern in that portfolio. So I wanted to make the board aware of this so that you could rest assured that this was not a predatory act by investors to increase influence and control. It was a forced cram down against their will that happened to increase their shareholding interest. And I dare say that if somebody approached them with a fair offer for their stock, they would sell it in a heartbeat. So this was a strategic move by the company, not a territorial move by an investor. And hopefully that offers some context for what happened.
Thank you. And I learned something today. Thank you very much for that explanation. And I know, at the risk of comparing us to gaming, which we try not to do, gaming went through this themselves when they had all of the mergers and all of the buying of the debts and what have you with the small casinos for big corporate companies. So I feel that we're maybe getting to that point, or are going to be seeing a lot more of these vehicles. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions from the board members?
Member Direct, for the record.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go ahead, Member Douglas?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. For Chief Staley, first of all, so they did comply with NCCR 5.110, because I thought there was maybe some confusion about whether they complied with that when we spoke before. It sounds like they brought this matter to, maybe not directly, but the whole thing was brought to the CCB's attention through their compliance with 5.110.
I don't remember, David Staley for the record, I don't remember that specifically. Our statutes are very basic when it comes to transfers of interest, and the area of concern was identified because the debt through the warrants and convertible debentures was converted to equity without prior approval. I think that the board now is starting to have to consider more complex transactions, especially when it goes to debt financing with our publicly traded companies. But our statutes are very clear. A transfer from debt to equity occurred without prior approval, and thus the area of concern identified in the investigative report.
Okay, so I'm going to accept council's representation that they complied with 5.110, since it sounds like there's no dispute that they did comply with that.
Member Durrett, if it would help, I do have a copy of the notice that I could provide to put on the record.
It sounds like there's no dispute that that was complied with, so that they were, I guess, openly, transparently providing their actions to the board. And then the debt to equity conversion, if they had already made kind of the structure of their company available agreements available, had already all gone through suitability. Is it possible that there would be an assumption that as the contract manifests itself and agreements made in this contract manifest themselves, that they don't need to go back for approval on specific provisions? If the agreement was entered prior to the CCB, do we have a process for then formalizing that agreement or double checking on that agreement once the terms of agreements come to fruition?
David Staley for the record. Member Durrett, we do have a position, in fact, or we do have a process. In fact, agenda item 6 addresses this. NCCR 5.110 paragraph 4 requires that for a security interest can be granted, it requires board approval. And you'll be hearing a similar application for item 6. In this case, specific approval for the security provided warrants and debentures was not specifically requested for. I think council's argument is that because those convertible debentures and warrants were part of the company's overall $10 million in debt, that there was an implicit approval when the board approved a specific transfer of interest at the April 26, 2022 board hearing. We have applied that concept in some cases when trying to understand transactions that occurred under taxation. But in this case, the specific warrants and convertible debentures with this conversion provision, it was not specifically identified for board approval. I suspect there are probably similar arrangements with some of our other companies, but when you're looking at $10 million in debt, that can get quite complicated. But it's something that the investigations division will be paying attention to in the future.
So for item 6, I don't think that's analogous because they're entering that agreement now. So I'm talking specifically about agreements that were entered before the CCB even existed. Because I suspect there's more of these, and I don't, if you have these publicly traded companies, they have compliance people, they have SEC attorneys flying in, they have local counsel, and they're clearly doing everything they can to comply. And so if there's other companies out there who have agreements that were put in motion 5 years ago, and then things are triggered so that those contract agreements, so that those contract provisions are triggered, I don't know that, I don't understand. So I know they don't understand. Well, how do what's the process for that? What's the process for, we don't need approval for this. We don't need approval for this. We've already been operating under this agreement for years, but we want to provide notice. And so we comply with 5.110 or 5.112, we provide notice. So I think it's unclear what the correct pathway is. Is there one that I'm missing?
Member Durrett, for the record, this is David Staley. Yes, item number 6 is evidence of procedure we have in place for prior approval of a grant of security interest pursuant to NCCR 5.110, paragraph 4.
Yeah, that's an agreement that's being entered now, that not one that was entered before the CCB existed, which I think is a distinguishing characteristic of this and other ones that may come up. That's why I'm concerned about how we treat it. I think I'll just wrap it up by saying, when it comes to, how we want to treat these, whether we want to approve them or send them back, I would and refer it to the AG to see if there was an intentional violation here. I don't think we can get that far into those details without there being findings of fact, typically. But in a case like this, with all the facts we have, and I don't think there are other facts that are relevant, I would not find that there was a violation. It like looks clearly like they were trying to comply. That's why they noticed, provided the 5.110 notice. And I think there's a little confusion about the path for getting confirmation about old agreements. So when it comes to, you know, what we're in support of, I'd be in support of approving to the extent it needs approval, and not in support of sending it to the AG.
Thank you. Any additional comments or concerns from the board?
Member Douglas, for the record, just kind of going back, and I appreciate, Mr. Glover, your presentation and Ms. Connor's presentation on this issue, just trying to hash it out. And to be very blunt and frank, yeah, we're in deep water as we go forward, and understanding the activity that interacts with SEC filings and the changes within. This is a situation, as you said, a passive, basically, investor, so to speak. The change was internal more, not outsiders coming in, things of that nature. But having said that, and Mr. Staley, just going back, as to this event, did they give notice when the event took place? Or is that something your folks in just reviewing found?
Justice Douglas, for the record, David Staley. Amanda, I think you mentioned that you have a copy of the notification. What was the date on that?
The notice was provided on October 21st, 2022, pursuant to 5110-10E, which states that if someone goes above 5% for 45 consecutive days, that after that you have 5 business days to alert. So given the timeline of when the debentures and warrants converted, that is within the timeline for providing notice. And I do have a copy if they would like me to provide that for the record.
Yeah, could you please? I don't have that in front of me, Justice Douglas, but
I was going to ask her, is that the extent of what you call notice? Not Mr. Staley, Attorney Connor.
It was a letter to the Cannabis Compliance Board, care of Chief Investigator Staley, giving the notice of the NCCR 5.110-10E, and identified who Navy Capital Green Management, Tribeca, and other Navy Capital Green Fund, Navy Capital Green Co-Invest Fund. And then, as Mr. Glover indicated, also really the shareholder that went below 5%, or shareholders that went below 5%, was also noticed in there. So yes, this was the company's notice was the letter, which is how the notices pursuant to that subsection of regulation are submitted.
And that notice, from your standpoint, no, I'm not going to disagree with you about notice. Was that before or after the fact of the transactions, the call?
It was after the fact, because the regulation says for 45 consecutive days that they have to hold that 5% for 45 consecutive days.
Okay, thank you. I will use one of my favorite legal terms, murky clear. We have an opportunity this date to look at this transaction as a learning experience. There's some question as to approval under the circumstances of what we partially approved previously in their transaction, them coming forth and notifying us as to the structure and the debentures and so on. We approve that. Then the question is, when it actually converts, when the trigger is pulled, or as Mr. Glover said, they were forced to go forward, where that puts us as to notice or board approval. And we have not been totally clear. I agree with Mr. Salient point in terms of, I think the law is somewhat clear, but again, we're talking about the daily operation of businesses. and look at. I, for one, joining Member Durrett, I'm going to, time for vote, move for approval of what's before us this day, but still ask that the matter go to the Attorney General to bring back the clarity of what happened in this transaction, so we can make sure the industry is aware of what the requirement is, whether it's notice or whether it's approval or a combination of both. And as Ms. Connor is talking about, the clarity as to the timeline, how it affects. But right now, that's a murky area that I think needs clarification for the board to do its job, and more importantly, so licensees can conform with what we're requiring and not put them in the lurch, so to speak. That's my comment at this point.
And I would agree with both of you in that I think we just need to work up this area, and I think that I'm going to put this on the record that we need some kind of a subcommittee. I mean, we basically have a little bit over a year for the new legislature, but or the new session. But we definitely need to work on this so that we're prepared for when we start getting some of these vehicles, and we have a process in place. But I appreciate all of your comments and explaining this to me, because this is not my area. So I need somebody to explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old. And so I feel a lot better with my decision now, having that information and Mr. Staley's information as well as Ms. Connors. Thank you very much. And any other additional comments? Up north?
Member Durrett, again, if I'm the one who gets to make the motion, it'll be for it to just be approved and not be referred to the AG's office, because I think they've already had to jump through hoops by doing this as a getting a transfer approval here when it's debatable whether or not they needed to, because these agreements were made in the past when they weren't necessarily required to. And then the conversion was an outcome of an agreement that was made in 2018. So I don't know that they even need approval at this point. And I would be really disheartened if I was a licensee, went through so much effort to be compliant and transparent, and then was investigated. I'd be disheartened, especially when I see, illegal market operators, some of them operating, out in the open. So if I get the opportunity to make the motion, that would be the motion.
We'll bring it back to the board in a minute if you have any closing comments, Mr. Glover.
Only that intent, to the extent the intent is important, I think it is. The conclusion that I would draw from this is that that Chief Inspector Staley's intentions were pure and honorable, and as were the intentions of CLS. That is, this is not a situation where anybody was trying to gain advantage. It really is the collision of two competing concepts that have yet to be vetted or fully understood. So I do want to at least acknowledge the goodwill on both sides to try to do the right thing here. We certainly feel like we complied with that fully. And the second thing I would like to say is that to the extent that you're looking for participation on the subcommittee to assist with these kinds of issues, and that participation can occur outside the board, we're happy to volunteer ourselves. Because we are a publicly traded company, and we also have some experience now in these murky, clear waters.
And this is how these things happen. Ms. Connor?
I think he summed it up well. No further comments.
Okay.
Chair Guzman-Freilich, I wanted to remind the board that they also have a requested waiver of 5.112 or 5.110% pursuant to 112.
Thank you. And with that, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
There's been a motion on the floor already.
Oh, thank you for
No problem.
clarifying that. Has there?
I thought you did. I thought
You haven't called for the motion.
Oh,
Oh, So Member Durrett, did you want to make that motion?
Oh, yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if Member Douglas had already made one. So I would first let me say a thank you for your comments about Chief Staley. I completely agree. I think the work here was, we all rely on him for the information we need about publicly traded companies, basically. Thank you very much for the work he did here. I would move to approve the transfer requested under agenda item 5A, and in addition, approve the waiver requested under NCCR 5.110, set to expire on the next agenda, on the next time CLS is on the agenda.
Great, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? We need clarification.
We would just repeat the motion. I got lost. So.
Okay. Could we repeat the motion, please?
Yeah. Move to approve the request for transfer of interest under agenda item 5A. In addition, the waiver requested under NCCR 5.110 would be granted, but set to expire as to the next time CLS Holdings is on a CCB agenda.
It's clear to me now what was put on the record. Thank you.
Okay, we have a first and we have a second. Member Douglas, is that your second?
My problem is I agree with the first part of her motion, but I would still like to add in that the matter be referred to our Attorney General to clarify the position as to notice and waiver. My feeling at this point personally is that there's no violation at this time, but we need the clarification as to where we are. We as a board have had maybe 5 nanoseconds to look at this. It's a little deeper. We need to understand it better and be able to advise the industry on the record what's required. That's what my intent is, not to hurt or put the licensee and SEC compliance issues problems.
Vice Chair Durrett, do you agree with the amendment or do you want to withdraw your motion?
I'm sorry, Member Douglas, I don't. But if I don't get a second, then I'll understand.
Okay, so we're going to try for a second. Because you withdraw your second. Yeah, we have a motion, Vice Chair Durrett's motion for approval with the waiver. Is there a second? Okay, I will make that second. And I just because I believe that this is larger than this specific case. And I agree with you. I don't want to affect I don't want to affect this publicly traded company in a way based on some process that we don't have in place. So I would second your motion. We have a first and we have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
This is Member Young. I support sending it back to the AG just for some clarifications. Just this is a murky, complicated, and just to hear what they have to say. I don't think a necessarily violation occurred here. I'm just I would like to just get some more information.
Okay, so
and for the record, Member Douglas, I'm same position. My intent was not to put them in a position to want to bring them back for violation, but to make sure this got to our Attorney General to go through and provide us information.
Okay,
So for that reason, I'm going to oppose the motion as it's so crafted because it grants it but doesn't do anything else. It just stops right there.
okay. Any additional discussion before, I mean, we know how you're going to vote, both of you, but we'll go through with our motion. So any additional discussion? And if not, call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion fails. And I'll entertain another motion.
I would make a motion for approval of the TOI that's been put forth today and the waiver of the waivers is called for, as Mr. Saley had put on the record, 5110s. But I would ask that our Attorney General review this and clarify to the board the situation where we have this, and I know it's going to come up later, but the issue is the board is approving certain activities. Is that a complete approval or is it only a partial approval where they have to give us information when the trigger gets pulled, as they say, or they're forced into a situation to convert? So in essence, there's a request for additional information, but we're approving. My motion is to approve the TOI before us today.
Okay. So Member Douglas, your motion is to approve the TOI. Is there a second? With the waivers?
With the waivers.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Member Young. I'll second that.
Okay, so just for clarification, this is approval of what we have before us with the waivers without sending it back to staff.
Well, it's sending it back to staff to provide the board with information to clarify the area.
Okay.
So it's not affecting the approval, but it's just requiring our staff to give us pertinent information as to this so we understand in the future by pulling the trigger and approving this process, whether an additional notice or approval is required in the future in these type of transactions.
Okay, so it's not affecting this item. So this is separate and apart from the actual motion. The motion is for approval of the transfer of interest with the waivers.
Yeah.
And then as a side note, staff, we need more information about this in general. And
to be clear on it, I'm not sending it back as we typically send it back for investigation for violation. This is investigation for future transactions.
In general, not an investigation on CLS per se.
So this Member Young, so I support that, but does it make sense that second side part should be something attached to agenda item 11 for future agenda items? Something that would,
I think that's cleaner.
I do support this. I absolutely.
And it broaches that, but we have this one, so this kind of tees it off.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. It's not the asking staff for more information, clarification is not specific to this, to CLS holdings and this agenda item. I mean, it brought it up, but it's not with regard to that. Okay. And with that, you have a second.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay, no, and I can support that. So with that in mind, we have a first, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? We just had it, right? Unless there's additional discussion.
Member Direct, for the record, just, yeah, I fully support the having some kind of structure around this discussion. I appreciate the manner in which it's being presented because I wouldn't want CLS to kind of be on the hook for this discussion to happen. I just, anybody who's received attorney bills in the mail is sensitive to, it's, if they can move on and can have this discussion and they're not on the hook for it, I'm sure that would be very much appreciated by them. So I do support that. Thank you.
But thank you for offering to volunteer to be on this subcommittee that we've just
I volunteered, Miss
talked about.
Dixon, by the way.
Okay. And I'm
Want
sure
to be clear about that.
our DAG over there is telling us to just stick to the agenda item. Okay, we will. All right. Okay, we'll call for the question or for the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Angela Dean and Chief Investigator Staley. As presented, this was a very unique item and very educational for all. We appreciate all their hard work.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have another request for a transfer of interest. Hopefully, we won't go into that much detail with the next one, but this is Circle S Farms LLC. Here representing Circle S.
This is Maggie McCletchy for the record. Ms. Connor in Carson City, I think, is going to handle the main presentation.
Chair-
Thank you, Ms. Connor.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board.
Mr. Staley, I'm sorry.
David Staley, Chief of Investigations. Item B is a TOI application by Circle S Farms LLC. TOI number 19004 was filed requesting approval for Glenda Shaw to sell her 2% ownership back to existing members Stacy Huffman, Darlene Davis, and Brenda Gonzalez. Circle S has also requested a waiver of 5.110 pursuant to 5.12. If approved, the requirement for prior board of transfers of less than 5% of Circle S ownership will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.12 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limits Circle S's waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. An area of concern was developed during this investigation as the sale of Shaw's membership interest occurred on January 11, 2019. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Amanda Connor, Maggie McCletchy, Stacy Huffman, Brenda Gonzalez, Darlene Davis, and Glenda Shaw are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I'll turn this item back to you.
Great, thank you and welcome. Ms. Connor.
Good morning, Chairwoman Guzman Freilich, members of the board. For the record, my name is Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor and Connor. I am here today with honor on behalf of Circle S Farms. I believe it is the only all-female owned cannabis establishment in the state. Appearing in person is Brenda Gonzalez and Alex Davis, and also Glenda Shaw. Appearing via Zoom is Stacy Huffman. For the board members who are unaware, Circle S was one of the original 2014 license holders, has been an all-female owned cannabis establishment who has a successful cultivation, production, distribution, and they added their Cannabis Stars retail store through the 2018 application process. For the record, just so everyone's aware, this transfer was submitted in January of 2019 under the Department of Taxation and has been pending since that time. Ms. Shaw, who is a resident of Nevada and a 2% owner of Circle S, wanted to be out of the company and has been requesting to be out of the company since that time. Just briefly, I believe you guys were provided our responses to the area of concern of an unapproved transfer of interest. But to make clear, the agreement itself calls for regulatory approval. The taxes that were provided to the CCB that the company has filed to date, even past the agreement in 2019, still lists Glenda Shaw as a member. She holds agent cards, has filed her attestations, and she submitted a letter to the CCB, which I believe should be in your packet, in 2023, saying she's still a member and would kindly request being out as she has been wanted to be bought out since 2019. Quite simply, the company's position is that payment of money does not equate a transfer of interest. She was still on the taxes. She was still treated as a member. She still held agent cards. She maintained the same role that she had prior to the agreement being signed. And the agreement clearly calls for regulatory
Chair, can
approval
I
as well.
interrupt Ms. Connor at this point?
Ms. Connor, okay.
We received a packet of a settlement in court.
Oh, is this for the additional items?
There
Chair
is
Douglas, I
a,
think this is for the
Does it
separate
affect-
transfer. Sorry, Ms. Connor.
Was
yeah,
this part of
I can talk about that settlement as well if you would like.
does,
That
does,
that's separate
well,
from
not so
this.
much talk about, but that resolved the issue as to transfer or not?
Justice Douglas, for the record, David Staley, Chief of Investigations. Initially, there were two areas of concern involved in this investigative report. The first was the transfer of Ms. Shaw's interest. The second was a litigation between Ms. Huffman and a Virgil Short. That litigation was settled, I believe, on November 3rd of this year, and the case was dismissed with prejudice as a result. That settlement occurred after the investigative report was completed, and because of the settlement, it's no longer an area of concern. Regarding the representation of whether or not Ms. Shaw transferred her interest, I'll point you to page 11 under areas of concern, wherein the agent discusses a telephone call she had with Ms. Shaw on August 18th, 2020, in which Ms. Shaw confirmed she received payment and her ownership interest for her ownership interest, and she was no longer considered an owner. So from the agent's perspective, there are conflicting accounts of whether or not the transfer of interest occurred. Based on direct representation by Ms. Shaw is why this was identified as an area of concern, despite letters that were provided suggesting that it had not occurred.
Thank you. And I guess that goes now back to Ms. Connor to talk about that.
Okay.
That's
Ms. Connor.
That's correct. And as I was identifying, the agreement says it requires regulatory approvals. She's still on the company taxes as a member. She submitted a letter in 2023 asking to be removed. She's held agent cards, and she is in person here today. I believe, Ms. McCletchie, correct? If the board has direct questions for Ms. Shaw, but to wrap this up, she is a 2% minority member, a passive owner who does not have involvement in the business, who has been waiting since 2019 to be removed and bought out by the other members of the company. We just kindly request that the board approve this and grant the waiver the company has requested so that Ms. Shaw can move on with her retirement and enjoy her life. Thank you.
Ms. Shaw is here. Maggie McCletchie for the record. Ms. Shaw is here and would be pleased to address any questions.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, any questions from the board members?
And for the record, Maggie McCletchie again, and I would just point out that there may have been confusion between the investigator and Ms. Shaw. We have her in person. We have a letter from her expressing her frustration at the transfer not being processed. Again, this transfer was submitted quite some time ago, and Ms. Shaw was a 2% owner, and the transfer was to existing owners. There was litigation against both Desert Air, the next transfer on the record, and Circle S, but to be clear, the litigation never resulted in any finding against the company. And in fact, in the release that I believe was also provided to the board, it states the short parties, those are the plaintiffs in litigation against the companies, concede that the litigation of the lawsuit has not yielded substantiation regarding Short's allegations of financial misconduct. So with regard to the concern about the prior litigation, it has been resolved. But frankly, from my position, just someone filing a lawsuit should not be an area of concern. Certainly if there's a finding by a court or there is substantiation during the investigation, but none of the allegations in that lawsuit, frankly, had merit. And it's unfortunate that it delayed the ability of Ms. Shaw to exercise other rights that she wants to exercise, and her ability to get out of a very highly regulated industry, and one that's federally illegal. Ms. Shaw has wanted out for quite some time. She hasn't been able to get out. The transfer was not approved, which is why we're here today. She's complied with her agent card requirements. The company has continued to include her on taxes. And Ms. Shaw was not active before the transfer. The transfer paperwork was originally submitted and hasn't been active since, but nothing changed. The mere fact that she received some of the funds upfront doesn't change the fact that this transfer has not been authorized or approved or effectuated. It's very clear. Everybody here understands and has always understood just how important getting CCB approval is.
Okay, thank you. And was the lawsuit the reason why it took so long?
That's my understanding. There's two things, frankly, that happened. First was the prior moratorium on transfers, and then staff had concerns regarding the lawsuit, and so the transfer the investigation wasn't completed and it wasn't presented to the board. Eventually, we're able to resolve that area of dispute between the company and CCB staff, and so we're pleased that it's finally here. And I think it's very important that this just reflects the issues surrounding the moratorium. I also think it reflects the reasons why mere allegations in a lawsuit shouldn't be a reason to not approve a transfer, and certainly shouldn't be a reason to delay presenting a transfer to the board so the board can consider those allegations and whether it poses a suitability issue. Here, in any case, there was no real suitability issue. These are very compliant companies, both this company and its sister company, and they've operated well for quite some time, and it was a 2% minority interest transfer to existing owners and operators.
Thank you. Any additional questions from the board? We do have options recommended by staff with regard to motions or what we want to do with this item. So any additional questions?
I'm still having difficulty when we say partial payment was made.
The payment, yes, Maggie McCletchie for the record. Ms. Shaw, the agreement did provide that payment was made upfront, and that certainly, in light of the moratorium and the subsequent delays in processing this transfer, it wasn't an ideal situation for the company. But the payment mere payment of funds does not mean that a transfer is effectuated. Ms. Shaw is still an owner of record. Her ownership interest and her role in the company had no change from before and after the paperwork was executed and the transfer paperwork was submitted. Certainly, the concern with unauthorized transfers is that new operators will come in that aren't disclosed and that transfers will be completed before approval from the board. That doesn't mean that partial steps such as signing paperwork and making a payment to an owner that has wanted out for quite some time, but is here today to finally ask the board to be let out. That is not, in my view, dispositive. And I don't think the board should constrain transactions such that no monies can be advanced or paid until the CCB approves transfers. Certainly transfers are happening more quickly now, but there can be obviously transfers can take some time. And a seller may negotiate as part of a transaction that they get paid upfront, even though they will remain to be an owner until the CCB approves the transfer.
We've had other cases where money was paid, but it was placed in escrow pending approval by this board. That's troubling to me that the consensus is we can do what we want and then come. It's better to
be clear,
take action and then ask for approval, forgiveness and approval later. And I'm just having a hard time getting my head around that.
Chair Douglas, this might be a different situation because this is not money that was coming into the cannabis companies. This is a small amount of funds that were paid to Ms. Shaw in consideration for her
To divest her interest in the company, correct?
subject to approval by the CCB. The agreement with Ms. Shaw makes crystal clear that approval by the CCB. So did the company bear risk that she might get paid, and it would be difficult to claw back the funds should the CCB not approve? But her interests were not divested because the agreement makes clear that the transfer has to be approved by the CCB and other regulatory authorities. And this is certainly not a situation, Chair Douglas, where either Connor and Connor or my firm were trying to effectuate a transfer for the clients and then come beg forgiveness. This transfer was timely submitted in 2019 and approval was sought. Ms. Shaw may have received consideration at that time for these transactions. Certainly, nobody anticipated the moratorium and nobody anticipated the delays that this specific transfer would face, but are parties free to exchange funds in advance of CCB approval to an outgoing 2% owner that frankly wants to be able to move on with her life and wanted the funds and deserved out of the company, but we had to wait to get CCB approval.
This is Member Young. Just, I guess, a fairly simple question. So your position, Ms. Shaw is still a 2% owner.
Correct. Ms. Shaw still gets agent cards. Ms. Shaw is still on the taxes and the financial information that was provided to the investigators, as Ms. Connor pointed out.
Yeah, this is Amanda Connor for the record. She is on the taxes. She received K-1s. So they're filing with other agencies, governmental agencies, still claiming she's a member of the company. She's on their company books. She is still a member despite having received the payment. Simply payment does not equate to divesting of her interest.
Any additional questions?
I guess the question goes back to Mr. Staley. It was given to us as an area of concern. You've heard what was stated. Is it still an area of concern, or based on the moratorium and other events, we're okay?
David Staley for the record, Justice Douglas. The purchase agreement itself does include language that it requires approval by the appropriate regulatory authorities. It also includes language that indicates that the consummation of the transaction contemplated included payment of the $80,000 purchase price. So the document is internally not clear. I think Council's argument is that ultimately, because the agreement says that it must have regulatory approval, that trumps the rest of the language in the purchase agreement itself. However, the fact that Ms. Shaw was included, we typically do look to the K-1s, and as Ms. Shaw was included in the K-1s, that would give me a higher level of comfort that she was still recognized as the owner by Circle S. The agent had to balance Ms. Shaw's verbal representation with the other documentation, and that's where we came to the conclusion that based on Ms. Shaw's representation on August 18th of 2020, that the transaction had completed.
Thank you. That satisfies my concerns.
Okay, so I think what we have here then is that the agreement to buy her out, Ms. Shaw out, monies were exchanged, but everything else, she remained as an owner of the entity. Everything, including she's still on the taxes. But you don't pay the taxes, correct? You don't continue to pay because you've been bought out. So you basically your name is still there. You're still considered an owner until everything's until it's been approved by us. And I do understand that you submitted your request for a transfer of interest under taxation, which is a whole different process than it is now. So you do continue to remain basically as an owner, other than you don't receive any monies and you don't give any monies. It's just in name only. Okay, but you do continue to keep up with our requirements.
All of the regulatory things that I am required to do, I do, including all of the attestations and going to the various municipal entities to get my sheriff's cards and all of that. Yes, just as if I was still part of this. When the question was asked of me, I did not understand the question, or I would have answered it differently when they called me.
Which question would that be?
The question of whether or not I had been bought out or whatever. I received monies, yes, but I was still part and principal of the entity itself.
And not to put any words.
This was during COVID, and I
Okay.
have a 90-plus-year-old mother that lives with me. So sometimes I'm not always hearing the right questions because I'm under a little bit of duress, which is part of the reason why I needed to be out of the industry.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, any additional comments from the attorneys?
Not for myself.
Not for myself.
Okay, what about the board members? Any additional comments, concerns, questions before we bring it back to the board for a vote?
Member Durrett, for the record, I think Chief Staley, I think we need to kind of have an understanding. Giving money is not transfer of ownership, or that's my understanding. I think, does everyone agree about that, or not everyone? I'm sorry, Chief Staley, do you agree on that?
Chief Staley, for the record, I believe that in a contract, the payment of funds is one component of complete contract. Yes.
And just for clarification, is under our rules and regulations, any transfer of funds has to be put into an escrow until everything has been approved. Is that correct?
Chief Staley, for the record, no, our regulations and statutes do not require that money be placed in escrow. However, that is commonly done by licensees to further help demonstrate that the transaction has not occurred. It also provides a level of security to the individual selling the shares in that they know the amounts in escrow. Now, in 2019, that was under taxation. I don't think that many, if any, transactions had occurred where the amounts were placed in escrow. That seemed to occur more often after the CCB stood up in an effort to demonstrate that, you know, there was a security for the seller, but that the transaction itself hadn't been completed.
And this is for staff. If somebody calls, and Director Klimas, you're still here, so you can still answer this. But do we, if somebody were to call our office and ask that they're going to undergo a transfer, or they're going to sell their share of the business, do you inform them or advise them to put all the funds in escrow until everything's been approved?
Sure, thanks for the question. Tyler Klimas, for the record. I mean, and we have those calls quite often. You know, individuals will reach out to Chief Staley in investigations, and that is always an option. I think, you know, Staley may not provide counsel or legal counsel, but that is always an option that is provided. We've had those discussions on a number of different occasions. Staley, you're welcome to add any context to that.
Chief Staley, for the record, Chairman Guzman-Frelick, we do get those questions quite often. I typically explain the requirements of the regulations, and prior approval is required for a TOI. If they have additional questions, I will explain how other companies have handled it in the past, but we don't I'm not providing legal guidance. So typically I'll say, well, we have seen these kinds of transactions occur in the past to give us a higher level of comfort. And that advice I can't.
Okay. I was under the impression that they had to put it in escrow, so that's good. I'm glad that that's been clarified for everybody and it's on the record until that changes. Okay, so any additional questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for approval of this TOI. I note for the record, though, that we're taking in the totality of the information to grant this because it is problematic when you do provide money. But having said that, I'll just leave it. We're motion for approval, looking at the totality of the actions.
Thank you for that
Member Durrett,
clarification.
second.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Amanda Connor, for the record, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but they do have a waiver request as well for 5112% to 5110.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I would include that with my motion.
Okay, motion's amended to add the waivers. We have a second. Are you in agreement with the second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And
Okay.
thank you to CCP staff on this.
Thank you. All right, we have two more items under this section. How does everybody feel about taking a 5-minute break, or do you want to keep going?
If we can finish the next two items, then maybe take a break.
We'll keep going. Okay. All right, we're item C is Desert Air Wellness LLC for a request for a transfer of interest.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, this is David Staley, Chief of Investigations. Item C is a TOI application by Desert Air Wellness LLC. TOI number 20004 was filed requesting approval for Paula Newman to sell her 17% ownership back to the company. Desert Air is majority owned by the same owners as Circle S, Stacy Huffman, Darlene Davis, and Brenda Gonzalez. Desert Air has also requested a waiver of 5.0 pursuant to 5.112. If approved, the requirements for prior board approval of transfers of less than 5% will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in CCR 5.112, and staff suggests that if approved, the board limit Desert Air's waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. An area of concern was developed during this investigation because the sale of Newman's membership interest occurred on December 14th of 2019. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Amanda Connor, Maggie McCletchy, Stacy Huffman, Brenda Gonzalez, Darlene Davis, Michael Sudkamp, Paula Newman are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will return this item back to you.
Thank you. Affirmative presentations.
For the record, Maggie McCletchy, Ms. Connor is going to handle the presentation from up north.
Thank you.
Good morning, Amanda Connor from the law firm of Connor and Connor. For the record, on behalf of my client, Desert Air Wellness, as Chief Investigator Staley indicated, this is a sister company and shares 3 of the main members, Stacy Huffman, who's on Zoom, Brenda Gonzalez, and Alex Davis, who are in person in Las Vegas, are the majority owners of this company. This is a transfer of interest that was submitted in January of 2020, prior to the CCB sitting as a board, and has been pending since that time. Similar to the prior discussion, my understanding is that there's a staff area of concern that there was an unapproved transfer. It is the company's position that it has not. The redemption agreement that was the agreement for this makes very clear that it is subject to regulatory approval before it happens. Ms. Paula Newman is still on the company taxes that were provided to the CCB. And Ms. Newman's counsel sent letters to the CCB in March, I believe it's March of 2023, indicating that she is still a member and asking that she urgently be removed because it had been pending for 3 years and that it was affecting her line of work and that she was being forced to continue to participate in a federally illegal business, which was impacting her other rights and impacting her new job. And therefore, kindly requested that the CCB process and approve this. That makes clear that Ms. Newman is of the position that she's still a member. The taxes of the company show she's still a member, and the agreement made clear it was subject to regulatory approval. As Maggie McCletchie indicated, she is counsel as well for Desert Air, and we are here for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. McCletchie. Do you have any additional
I have
comments?
nothing further unless there's any questions that Ms. Connor and I or the client representatives need to address.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any additional questions? Questions from board members?
Member, for the record, I just forgot to add to the last one that thank you for everything this group does for the community. I know they service a lot of people in their area. They have like an annual Thanksgiving where they provide food for locals that are struggling, and they do a lot of similar events to that. So thanks for that work they do.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
Member Durrett, I move to approve the transfer request under agenda item 5C. Is there a waiver? Which way? 5.110?
5.112% to 5.110.
Okay, and that would include the waiver of 5.112% to 5.110.
Okay, do we have a second?
This Member Young, I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Young. First and a second, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have NLV Wellness LLC and NLV Mayflower Holdings LLC for a request for transfer of interest. Mr. Staley.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, my name is David Staley, Chief of Investigations for the CCB. Item D is a TOI application by NLV Wellness LLC, TOIs 200005 through 200010 and 230019 were filed on September 25th, 2020, requesting approval for internal restructuring of NLV Wellness. TOIs number 205 through 2010 later requested to be withdrawn due to internal disagreements and no longer wanting to complete the internal restructuring. TOI number 230019 is ultimately filed requesting approval for David Chen and Zhaohang O, thank you, through NLV Mayflower Holdings to purchase Nevada Wellness. An area of concern was developed regarding NLV Wellness because it appears that the proposed internal structuring occurred without approval. NLV Wellness provided Internal Revenue Service or IRS Form K-1s for the 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years, reflecting the requested approval requested by TOIs 205 and 2010. Form K-1s disclose the persons considered owners for federal income tax purposes. NLV Wellness explained the transfers had not occurred and the Form K-1s had filed in error. However, NLV Wellness was only able to provide board agents with unsigned amended federal tax returns and no additional supporting documentation supporting its claim if the transfers had not occurred. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that David Chen, Salman Ali, Conrad Kufferman, Maggie McCletchie, and Elaine Opie are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I'll turn this item back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just had some questions from Mr. Ali and Mr. Kufferman. Or
Mr.
Miss,
Kupferman is not available. I'm here today in his presence. My name's Elaine Opie with Greenberg Traurig. I'm his counsel.
okay. I just have a question with regard to their understanding of their ownership. If they could just explain.
Mr. Kupferman is of the opinion that he has never had an ownership interest in this company. It's unfortunate that the tax returns were submitted in the manner in which they were. A lot of that is outside of my client's hands. He was not in participation with that venture to get the tax returns filed. However, he was advised that the documents were filed, indication that he had an ownership interest via K1, and his instructions to the company were to amend the tax returns. It was his understanding that that was taken care of and that was submitted with the IRS. So it should have, and it's, unbeknown, I have no idea why those documents were not provided to the board. It seems like that could have been a very simple fix had it been done. But my client's position is he does not have an ownership interest in this company.
Okay, Mr. Ali.
Just to clarify, the error that was made and the amended returns were done before they were even asked for. And the investigator, when I spoke to them, I provided them the amended returns. They didn't ask me for anything additional than that. Like if they would ask me to go get any other additional documentation, I would have went and got it. To clarify it, I thought I provided them with the correct copies of the amended returns. They were satisfied with what I gave them and didn't ask me for anything else after that.
Any additional?
Maggie
comments we
McCletchie
could
for the
relate?
record. I'm here on the subsequent transfer number 19 to NLV Mayflower Holdings, but I represent both parties to that transfer. And I will say that during the closing conference, I was not aware that there were items outstanding. We've provided substantial information, documentation, and work closely with Angela Dean, investigator Angela Dean, who I thank, by the way, for her very hard work on this matter. But if there's further information that the CCB needs, certainly I think that we would be happy to get and provide it. But I certainly don't think that it should impact either the withdrawal, which both parties want, and nobody disagrees that prior transfer was not effectuated, and that the prior proposed owners don't want to proceed. And this license has had some challenges. It has a settlement agreement. There is a proposed transfer before the board today that would allow the licenses to get a fresh start, would allow Mr. Ali and the current owners to be able to have the funds to pay off the remaining amount on a settlement agreement with the CCB on a disciplinary matter. So I would hope that the prior confusion on the part of a CPA wouldn't affect the ability to process the additional transfer today.
Thank you. Any additional questions from board members?
I have a question. It's an open question. It's hard for me to support this when a document was filed, a tax return, and there'd been no explanation as to why it got submitted in the form it was. When parties saying, I never approved this to happen, I wasn't part of it, and the other party has not given us anything except we filed something to change that tax filing notice. So it's problematic for me. If that's better to send it to our council to investigate further on that and just approve this with that stipulation. That's about as far as I'm going to go. But it's just problematic at this point.
Maggie McCletchie for the record. I believe that Mr. Ali's representation is that the CPA made an error. The CPA was aware of the potential transaction. The CPA made an error, and it was subsequently corrected. And I think on this transfer, that those transfers are before the board for withdrawal.
I have to believe a trained professional doesn't file certain things unless they have some inclination from the client, and the client ultimately signs the bottom line. So I'm sorry, it gives me a bad taste in my mouth, what's being offered to me as a reason for doing this. But as I said, approving the first part, fine, but I think the second part needs to look at, because as is stated quite often, I don't have enough information that I'm trusting at this point to understand what happened with that misfiling. And maybe when I have it, I'll be fine with it.
For further clarification, this was stuff that was submitted back in 2019.
It doesn't matter when it was submitted, sir. If it was submitted by the company, the parties that are in front of us today, that travels with you.
Right.
I can't cut it off because it happened in the past. It happened, or it didn't happen, as I said. I have to
but
make
this
the
was-
representation. I don't have enough information today.
What I'm saying is this was an error on the CPA part. Yes, they were signed and probably weren't looked over properly, but this was just an error. There was never any transfer that happened. There's never any ownership, any of that. So it was because these documents were submitted and they, from my understanding, the CPA thought that those people that it was supposed to be put on the potential owner was supposed to be put on the tax returns for some reason or another. And it was a mistake.
Maggie McCletchie, for the record, the important thing too is that amended tax returns were provided, and I think no one is of the position that the parties to the prior proposed transaction don't wish to continue. Certainly, they haven't been acting as owners and are not currently involved with the company in any way. And I think all the parties to the prior proposed transaction back from 2019 wish that proposed transfer to be terminated, withdrawn.
If I may, this has taken a lot of time for my client to have to oversee from New York. He does not wish to be part of this company any longer in any way, shape, or form. He's had to expend money for legal fees for me to come here today and kind of monitor what's been going on and interface with Angela and Dean, and which I'm happy to do. However, at this juncture, I would request that the transfer of ownership application that we submitted the withdrawal on back in December be considered and be approved so that my client can move on with his life and allow the licensee and whatever they're going to do moving forward to be addressed by the board properly.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions by the board members? Any other comments or questions?
This is Maggie McCletchie for the record. I'd be happy to address the proposed transfer. I just wasn't sure if the board wanted to address the withdrawal before the proposed transfer.
Any opposition to go on to the transfer, discuss the transfer? Okay.
Chief Staley, did you have a preference? The proposed transfer which is 230001919 is from the existing owners and the existing entity NLV Wellness LLC to an entirely new company, NLV Mayflower Holdings LLC. The two owners are here today, as Mr. Staley pointed out, Zhaohang Ao and David Chen. They're both immigrants from China. They both have experience both in small businesses and in cannabis. There's other proposed principals who went through the suitability investigation with Investigator Dean. One is Hung Ha, who's here with us today and would be happy to address any questions regarding the company and its experience. The other is Joey Espinoza, who is the planned person to make sure that this establishment is run in the future in a compliant way. The proposed owners and principals have experience in cannabis in various states, Oklahoma, California, and Seattle. Their experience includes cultivation, production, and a testing lab. They have been working as volunteers alongside the current operator to learn, to make sure they understand the Nevada business and to avoid prior issues. They understand the compliance history and the prior settlement agreement, and they are excited about moving forward. They are excited about operating compliant establishment. And they're also excited about being in Vegas. They all have a history here. David is a former professional gambler. They're all in the process of, if not already living here, of moving here. Part of this transaction will the current owners of the license, NLV Wellness, will no longer be involved with the company. The CCB will not have to deal with NLV Wellness LLC, and Mr. Ali and the other current owners can also move on with their lives. Further, with regard to the significant CCB settlement, which a significant chunk remains to be paid, the establishment does not have a current way to they are paying timely, but it's difficult to make the payments because in light of the business. But the proposed buyers, as part of this transaction, the settlement agreement, the settlement amount will be paid. And this is a way for the licenses to get a fresh start. Yet the history is unfortunate, but it's an opportunity for young entrepreneurs to try their hand in the cannabis business in Nevada. Unless anybody has any further questions for me or my client representatives here with me today. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand what the organizational chart is going to look like after the withdrawals and the transfer of interest. If you could just explain it to me.
Sure. NLV Wellness LLC will not hold the licenses. A new LLC, NLV Mayflower Holdings LLC, will hold the licenses. The two owners of that license are Zhao Hang Ao, who also goes by Jason, who is here, and also David Chen, who is here. They're the two proposed owners. They will also be operators, and further, Hung Ha, who is here, will not be an owner, but he will be the COO, and his focus will be on. But there are only two owners of the new proposed the LLC that's the new proposed owner, which is NLV Mayflower Holdings, and the current operator and owners will not be involved in the business.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Ms. McCletchie, was Plants Over Pills Inc. POP any part of Mayflower? Or is that just a totally separate entity?
I'm not. I know that there was a prior issue and it's outside the scope of my representation. I can tell you that that entity has nothing to do with this transaction or these owners. We've been very forthcoming with all of the information about NLV Mayflower Holdings, and we worked very closely with Angela Dean. They've worked hard to get sufficient funds. They've worked hard to develop a pro forma and a business plan, and they have nothing to do with plants, pills, people for plants that I don't remember, but I have some
you answered my question.
Yes, they have no involvement, and they would be happy to, I'm sure, confirm that if you need.
Okay, if we can hear from the two new owners.
Or Mr. Ha might present on their behalf too.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
And
For the record.
hi, and can you just let me know what is your intent with this company? What do you want to do with it? What do you not want to do with it?
Well, my friends have always wanted to be owners, and when this opportunity presented itself, it was kind of perfect. I've been looking to move back here. This is my third stint in Vegas, so I've been here throughout my life, and I'd like to eventually settle down here as well.
Are you the professional card player? Or is that,
No,
oh,
no.
that's you. The one with the poker face.
I'm no good at poker. But yeah, I want to develop, start working here and bring new strains to Vegas and develop it in-house, and just, bring a different flair here. A lot of the strains I see are like, from everywhere. So I just want to start developing something just specific to Vegas.
Are you using the same CPA?
No, I'm not having new. Yeah. Definitely bringing a whole new crew.
And they plan to do flowers and pre-rolls, their business plan that we provided to Ms. Dean. Mr. Chen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, David Chen for the record. Yeah, so I've been in Vegas since 2004. I came here, moved here to play poker. I did that for quite a while. Then I got married, divorced. Then just, yeah, I've been moving around, but home is always been Vegas. And I just got a newborn, and my wife is in Denver right now. So I've been, trying back and forth, but eventually I went back here.
Okay. Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
New wife.
The second one, yes.
Yeah. And the baby's name's Aria, the casino.
Really? Okay, I won't ask why, but okay. Congratulations. Okay, any additional questions? Okay. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion. The motion?
Member Dret, I move to approve the requested withdrawals and transfer of interest under agenda item 5D.
Okay, we have a first. Is there a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? No discussion? Okay. Then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed? One nay. Okay. Motion carries, and thank you very much.
Thank you
All
very
right, and
much.
good luck. Good luck. All right, bye-bye.
I don't know. I didn't hear exactly what the motion was. Motion was for just straight approval,
yeah, okay.
nothing else.
All right. Okay, we are done with the transfers of interest. And before we go on to the approval of the security interest, which I believe this is the first one of its kind that we've done. So that might take a little explaining. So we'll just take, let's be back here at 12:15. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back on the record. Again, this is the November 14th, 2023 meeting of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board. We are on item 6 of our agenda. This is a consideration of approval for security interest for DED Ops NV LLC.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. Director Klimas, this is the last item I'll be presenting on one of your agendas. Tyler, thank you for your leadership and your continued friendships. It means a lot. Thank you so much. I'm here to present agenda item number 6, which consists of one request for approval of a grant of security interest. NCCR 5.110 paragraph 4 requires in part that a person shall not grant a security interest without board approval. This is the first such request that's been submitted to the board. On October 5th, 2023, Desert Evolution LLC requested approval to pledge certain ownership interests in connection with a promissory note, loan agreement, and pledge agreement with James Hammer. Hammer is also an existing owner of Desert Evolution, and his loan to the company will help provide needed financing. Staff suggests that if approved, approval of the grant of security interest be conditioned to provide that a TOI application be filed and board approval received prior to foreclosing on the pledged securities. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Amanda Connor and James Hammer are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Connor, you have an affirmative presentation for us today.
Good afternoon now, Chairwoman
afternoon.
Guzman Freilich. Amanda Connor from the law firm of Connor and Connor on behalf of Dead Ops NV LLC. In person down in Vegas is Mr. James Hammer, who goes by Jim, and his son, James Hammer, who can answer questions on behalf of the proposed lender. I believe via Zoom might be Brandon Cannons, who is the owner of Dead Ops NV LLC as well. As you mentioned prior to the break, and Chief Investigator Staley mentioned, this is the first of this type of agreement coming before the board, but it is pursuant to regulations that prior to a security interest being granted, that the board shall approve it. The company kindly requests approval. It will give the company the needed funds to continue its business. For the board members who are not aware, it runs Wallflower Dispensary out on Blue Diamond. It does, the agreement calls for, and the company does understand that a transfer of interest would need to be submitted and approved should there be a triggering event in the agreement to cause such exercise of that. It is my understanding, and Chief Investigator Staley can correct me if I'm wrong, but that there was some suitability investigation of the proposed lender, and therefore there would be possibly a more truncated or expedited suitability investigation on such transfer if it needed to go before the board, which is one of the reasons, my understanding and policy as to why these come before the board before the security interest is granted. I'm available for any questions, and like I said, Mr. Hammer is down in Vegas and can address questions as well.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Hammer and Hammer. So tell us what, just, you know, what basically is going on here? What are we trying to accomplish?
We've been partners with Desert Evolution now for several years. We bought the license at auction. It's been a very profitable partnership for the dispensary. James and I, we have no interest financially in the cultivation production, but it's been a good partnership and we're happy to help them. And we got along very good for these last couple of years, and we're happy to extend the credit to them.
Okay, thank you. And welcome. And this is your son?
Yeah, James Hammer for the record. Yeah, just going back off that, the cultivation and production facility is going to start expanding. It needs capital for that expansion. My dad and myself represent, one part of the partnership in Wallflower Cannabis House, which is the security that's being proposed here. We're very familiar with the asset, which is why we feel comfortable, bringing, the lending component, against that asset. And then, as my dad said, mentioning helping partners, who we've done business with for, the last 5 years.
Wonderful. Good job, Dad. Okay.
Did a good job with me, didn't he?
He did. Okay. Any additional comments from council?
No additional comments at this time.
Okay, then we'll bring it to the board for questions. Any questions from the board?
Member Douglas.
I just, oh gosh, sorry.
Anyway, Member Douglas for the record. Mr. Hammer, jointly, you do understand that pursuant to the agreement and our interpretation, that the security interest that you're granting, so to speak, cannot be foreclosed upon without prior board approval.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Member Drat, I just wanted to quickly,
right.
Sorry, Chair. I just want to quickly say thanks to Chief Staley and staff for getting this on the agenda so quickly, especially it being a first and it needing to be done quickly.
Okay, any additional comments before we vote on this?
No.
Okay, all right, let's bring it back to the board then, and I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion for approval of the security interest for DED Ops Nevada LLC, D010 RD010.
We have a second?
Member Young, second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you to Chief Investigator Staley for working through us on this process, as it was a new item, and we appreciate all the staff's work.
Okay, we are now on to item 7, which is the adjudication of disciplinary action. Before us is item A, which is Cannabis Compliance Board versus Julian Jayo. And do we need a presentation here from council? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. For the record, this is Emily N. Bordelove, Senior Deputy Attorney General, appearing as counsel for the CCB for item 7, for education of the matter of CCB versus Julian Jayo, case number 2022-067. As the board is likely aware, given its review of the materials provided, which are the administrative record, including the pleading and exhibits, recordings of the early case conference and hearing, and hearing officers' finding of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendations, the CCB filed this complaint here after investigating and substantiating a report from a cannabis facility that an employee had been seen on surveillance video taking cannabis from the facility into his personal possession. Based on the resulting investigation, the complaint alleged violations of NRS 678B385, subsection 3, preventing being videotaped stealing cannabis, and of NCCR 4.035, subsection 1A15, for diversion of cannabis, a category 1 violation. The CCB served respondent the complaint at the mailing address he provided in his agent card application. However, he's never filed an answer to the complaint. The matter was referred to the CCB Hearings Division to proceed before the hearing officer. Despite receiving notice of these proceedings sent to the same mailing address, respondent did not appear at the early case conference, nor did he appear at the hearing. As noted in the record before you, at the hearing, CCB presented evidence through surveillance video, investigating board agent testimony, and documentary evidence demonstrating respondent, more likely than not, skimmed cannabis during the trimming process, hid the cannabis, and took it out of the facility into his vehicle. As noted by the hearing officer, respondent was advised in writing numerous times through the course of those proceedings that failure to file an answer or appear at the hearing would be deemed his admission of all the facts alleged in the complaint as provided in NRS 678A 520 subsection 3. As outlined in the hearing officer's findings of facts and conclusions of law, the hearing officer found that the CCB met its burden of proof, finding it more probable than not that respondent violated NRS 678B 8385 subsection 3 and NCCR 4.035 subsection 1A15. This burden was met by respondent's admission of the factual allegations alleged in the complaint due to his failure to appear. Furthermore, the hearing officer found that the CCB presented evidence which overwhelmingly supported a finding that respondent violated said statutes and regulations. Based on the foregoing, hearing officer recommended the board revoke respondent's agent cards as NRS 678B 385 provides that having been electronically recorded stealing cannabis is grounds for immediate revocation of agent cards. Further, NCCR 4.0352B requires revocation of agent cards for a first violation of the prohibition of diversion of cannabis, and to suspend those agent cards with no opportunity to reapply for 9 years and 11 months. So I'd ask the board to find that the factual allegations were proven, adopt the hearing officer's factual findings based on a preponderance of the evidence in the record and testimony presenting at the hearing in May. Based on those factual findings, the preponderance of evidence, adopt the hearing officer's conclusions of law. Pursuant to 4.135 subsection 2, I'd also recommend that the board impose the discipline recommended by the hearing officer, specifically revocation of the respondent's agent cards and suspension of those agent cards with no opportunity to reply for 9 years and 11 months pursuant to NCCR 4.030 subsection 1B. That time would begin to run from the day that the board issues its written order. I am available for any additional questions the board may have. I understand notice of this education was sent to respondent. I'm not sure. It does not appear that he's here in Las Vegas. I do not see one at the podium up in Reno unless I'm missing something. So with that, I submit.
Okay, thank you, Dag Wardlove. And if we do have the respondent here or counsel, could they please come up to the podium? Or online, if they're online. Doesn't appear so, though. Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions?
There are two things. One, the finding of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendations that have been put forth indicates that on numerous occasions, notice was sent to Mr. J.O. and did not respond or did not show to any of the events that he was provided notice. Is that correct, Counsel?
That is correct.
I have no additional questions. I would note for the record that we're required to state that at least 3 of our members have reviewed the record. So it's a proper proceeding. I, for one, I've reviewed the record. I'll state that as one.
I as well.
Member Young, I also reviewed.
Okay, and I'll let the record reflect also that respondent is not anywhere in the Las Vegas facility or the Carson City facility, nor online. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board members? Questions for our DAG? Okay, with no further questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
Member Douglas, for the record, make a motion as to this disciplinary action of Cannabis Compliance Board versus Julian J.O. case number 2022-67, that we accept and the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations that have been provided to us as of this case, and that suspension of respondent's agent card with no opportunity to apply for reinstatement of any agent card for a period of 9 years and 11 months is warranted.
Is there a second?
Member Young, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, we're on to our agendas now, and we've got a few agendas to consider. I mean, on to our regulations. We have a few regulations to consider. We have our first presentation. Hey.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
For the record, Senior Deputy Attorney General Al Christopher Rath. Good afternoon, Chair, Chair, members of the board. I will be presenting the proposed cannabis receiver regulations under agenda item 8 today, specifically items A through H. Ms. Cronkite will deal with item I. I know we're a little pressed for time, so I'm going to try to be fairly brief. As you recall, the CCB initially presented these proposed cannabis receiver regulations at a workshop in September 2021. They were revised since then and again presented to the CCB at another workshop on August 24, 2023. CCB has now further revised the proposed receiver regulations since that workshop based on both the written comments and verbal comments received from the second workshop. These regulations are now on the board's agenda to vote for final approval in the form that is before the board today. I will note that during the course of this meeting, I briefly met with Ms. Ashcraft who asked for one change to first regulation 5.170 subsection 1, subsection B, which dealt the death of a natural person and applying to the board for the approval of a cannabis receiver over the establishment under such situations. Ms. Ashcraft asked that the word until be deleted and changed to unless or until, so that clause would be authorized by the board and or a court unless or until such time the board determines such a cannabis receiver is no longer needed. I'm in agreement with that change. I can go through each of the subsections and statutes briefly or regulations briefly if you'd like me to do that, or I can simply take questions.
I'm okay, but if the members need you to go through, I think we're all okay. Okay, unless Vice Chair Durrett, do you need a rundown of all of them, or are you okay with taking questions?
I'd like to go forward with taking questions. Thank you.
So if there are any
I mean,
questions,
I don't need further explanation. I mean, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any questions from the board members?
I guess
Mr. Rath?
Member Douglas, the only question is, do we have anything else from anyone else in the audience references?
if there's any public comment, I'm happy to hear it.
Okay. On these regulations, is there any public comment in the South with regard to this specific regulation? Yes.
Correct.
We're leaving I out for right now.
Thank you so much. Alicia Ashcraft, the law firm of Ashcraft and Barr. I want to thank Senior Deputy AG Rath and Deputy Miles for their indulgence. Just to clarify, in 5.170 sub 1 sub B, the issue there is that it makes it mandatory without this change. It makes it mandatory that if you have a 50% owner that dies or is incapacitated, you must apply for a receiver. And I've had a situation where I had an over 50% owner that was not involved in the day-to-day operations, was an investor, and the establishment otherwise had sufficient other owners and operators so that the facility could go on, and the governing documents provided for adequate suspension of the interest if there was death or incapacity of an owner. So there were other mechanisms to deal with this, and the appointment of a receiver, seeking a receiver to take over the operations, is a very significant and drastic and expensive proposition.
And so I just wanted to allow for the possibility that we could come before the board and provide those other circumstances that give you assurance that the facility is otherwise sufficiently cared for and operated in a compliant manner without the need for a mandatory receiver to be sought. So that was the comment under that subsection. Just really quick at the risk of invoking the ire of Mr. Rath and Mr. Miles. Just two quick other in subsection, again, this is 5.170 sub 1, or I'm sorry, sub 4. The within 21 calendar days of the death, incapacity, or disability of any natural person to come forward with a transfer application is a very short period of time. I understand the need to move quickly, and I know that Mr. Staley and Chief Staley and staff have worked quickly in other situations. It's just a lot, especially when you do have the death of a family member, to find who's going to take that interest over for them to complete the requirements of the background investigation. I would ask for consideration of a little more time, but if not, if perhaps there is a mechanism by which someone could ask for an extension of that time period if it is insufficient, but folks are working toward getting that taken care of. And then last, in subsection section 6, I understand why noting that this is a category 3 violation is here in this subsection. I would just ask, and I did speak with Senior Deputy AG Rath and Deputy Miles regarding this, that it really needs to be and ought to be also in NCCR 4.050. We just don't want violations to be in a multitude of places in the regulations, that it's really helpful for the licensee to have those all set out in the same place in NCCR 4. And I've spoken with them. They have assured me that that will be added there as well. Thank you for your indulgence.
Brief response. As noted before, I agree with the change to 5.170 subsection E. And if the board is to approve it, I would ask to be approved with that change for the reasons stated, which I find. As to subsection 4, the 21 calendar days, these things do need to be done quickly. It is doable. We had this exact situation with our first receiver. We were able to accomplish it. I'm not sure there's any prohibition against requesting an extension to that if needed. I think it's fine as it is. On subsection 6, I do agree that would need to be in regulation 4 as well. Once we have all that regulation 4 changes completed, I anticipate it would be put in there as well.
Maggie McCletchy, for the record, I apologize for not bringing this up earlier, but Ms. Ashcraft's comments made me notice that it's not within 21 days of when the company learns of the death, and there could be a death of an inactive minority owner owning 3%. And certainly I don't think there should be a strict liability. The company can't be expected to monitor every single owner. And so I would suggest changing it from when the company learns of the death.
Okay. Any other comments? Comments in the north or online?
If you wish to provide public comment, please dial *6 to raise your hand or click the raise hand icon. There are no comments online.
Thank you. Okay. So we've got before us any additional questions from the board members? Comments?
Chair Douglas, Chair. Member Douglas for the record. I'm tired.
Chair Member Douglas, just as a reminder, we only have until 1 before gaming
I
kicks us
will
out of here.
be brief as I tried to be. As to the 21-day provision, I think if we look at a 30-day or, and I hate to throw that out, good cause is shown to come forward. Good cause, I know it's a great big truck going through, but it allows us to listen to see if there in fact good cause. That would be my position. I don't know how others feel about changing that 21 days or putting something in to allow.
I could make a suggestion to make it change section 4 to within 30 calendar days, comma, or longer if good cause is shown of the death.
Thank you for scribing my inarticulate recommendation.
And we'll get a revised one to all of you. But that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
That's acceptable.
Okay. With those changes noted on the record, any appetite for a motion based on that? And this would be for items A through H.
Correct.
This is Member Young. I'll move.
I noticed item I, where it's just, are we only doing item A?
Well, yeah, through
Yeah, we
H.
took I out. Yeah.
This is Member Young. I move that we approve agenda item 8A through H, the proposed adoption amendment and or repeal of Nevada cannabis compliance regulations as stated, with the changes that were noted.
Member Douglas, for the record, I am happy to support, and I would second the motion to approve A through H with the modifications put on the record.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go on to agenda item 8I. And this is with regard to regulations on cannabis establishment, storage, management, and disposal of waste. Ms. Cronkite.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'm Kara Cronkite for the record. I'm here to present agenda item 8I regarding 10.080. We received a petition from Green Life Productions, also known as GLP, in August of 2022 to amend NCCR 10. This was heard at the September 27th, 2022 board meeting, after which GLP and members of the CCB staff got together and agreed upon new language. On 12/28/22, that language was sent out for a solicitation for input. And then it was also up for consideration at the governor's workshop in April. This language change will allow for licensed cannabis establishments to dispose of their cannabis waste by composting, as long as they comply with USDA requirements and that the compost does not leave the cannabis establishment. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions from board members? Okay, hearing none. Any questions from the public or comments?
Good afternoon, Scott Rutledge with Argentum Partners on behalf of Green Life Productions. I just wanted to thank Chief Cronkite and the staff for working with us so diligently on this. And we would appreciate your support in approving this new language. And thank you for saving the best for last on today's agenda.
Thank you.
Nicole Bafong for the record, representing Minorities for Medical Marijuana and the Chamber of Cannabis. Some of the best flower in the state is being grown using compost, the most clean, sustainable, and regenerative cultivation practices. I've traveled all over the country, and the most experienced cultivators and consumers rave about GLP grow practices. Here in Nevada, we have an opportunity to be leaders in the industry by implementing the amendment to 10.080 to allow operators to make their own compost and use the USDA guidelines to qualify for organic grow. I purchase my food, my organically grown food from farmers markets around the city to support my theory that food is medicine. I purchase, and thank you to GLP for also growing organic produce that is also sold at those farmers markets. I purchase only no-till soil products from dispensaries to best support my healing journey. So I appreciate you supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Okay.
Amanda Connor for the record. I am in support of this. I just wanted to note, as an ongoing discussion, there have been talks with CCB staff and brought up at some meetings that some of the regulations regarding documentation, inventory control, and specifically logs need to be updated. And in here, in CCR 6.0807DE talks about the log and waste destruction, but has not been amended to talk about the use of composting. And yet I believe staff would want some documentation on that. Therefore, I just kindly request that regulations regarding those logs and updating them onto what is required by licensees to document be workshopped and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Timothy Eliotto for the record. I would just like to include that this is a progressive step, and this is a big win for regenerative ag, or methods of basically implementing organic and safe production. So I'm in huge support of this, and I think it does also set what we hope to achieve in Nevada, the gold standard. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Additional comments on this regulation? Okay. Nothing online?
Dial *6 to raise your hand if you wish to provide public comment. There's no online comment.
Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion on
Yep.
the approval of this item?
This is Member Young. I'll move that we approve agenda item 8I regarding the adoption amendment and or repeal of Nevada cannabis regulations.
Is there a second?
Member Douglas, for the record, I would second the motion to approve item I
Okay.
as to 10.080.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for that. We are now on to item 9, which is a briefing of our chair and our executive director. Again, thank you for your service. I wish you luck. I'm sure you're gonna do amazing things like you did here. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to clarify, somebody asked me in the break that this was not a decision that I took lightly. I've been working with you for a couple months now on this transition and what it looked like. And it was made in the greatest consideration of my family and what's best for us. And so thank you for your support in this and appreciate everything. Thank you.
Okay, our next meeting is December 12th already, 2023. Any items for future agendas?
Chair, is it possible to revisit the issue of service agreements at another date and what all we will be considering? Like what requires approval and what doesn't? On a
On
future
service
agenda?
agreements. Okay, so like a presentation from staff with regard to what that means?
Or a board discussion, maybe both.
Okay. Service agreement discussion. Okay, any other items for future agendas? We did talk about the discussion about publicly traded companies and what procedures we're going to do with that, maybe having either a subcommittee or some discussion. That's for future agenda items. That's my 2 cents. Anything else? Okay, now we go on to public comment in the South.
Scott Rutledge for the record, Argentum Partners. I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Tyler, let him know how much we appreciate the work he's done for this industry over the last few years. Appreciate your work. Thank you.
Timothy Eliotto for the record. Just wanted to include by stating that legacy. Well, I'm very saddened to hear, to be honest, the departure of Director Clemens. To be honest, it's a sad day, but also a happy day. It's a happy day for justice, and I know it may not be the topic of interest to discuss at times, but I'd like for you to understand that there was a time where we had leaders such as former Commissioner Chris G. In charge of policymaking. We had leadership in law, and I'll have to say rest in peace to Jacob Hafter. To go back, unfortunately, the only stain I just wanted to say thanks to Clemens for everything he's done, to the staff, but the only unfortunately stain that would be on your legacy is your failure with the social equity program in terms of the process, how that was done. I don't think that system was fair. There was a level of nepotism involved. I have spent numerous of time proving that here. And I hope that the next step would be investigations. Thank you.
Additional comments in the South? Seeing none, we'll go to the North. Any public comment in the North? Okay, what about online?
We have one public comment, Sunflower Compassionate Company. Please state your name before giving your comment.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Rachel Lee and my company is Sunflower Compassionate Company. I called in today to say thank you to Mr. Tyler Klimas for your service to the CCB. You are a great part of history in the making for people that were affected by the war on drugs. You boldly contributed to the start of a social equity program when there was none. You also created a committee to draw concerns and ideas to implement a program. Thank you for being patient. I wanted to find people that shared the same interest and passion as I, such as safety, compliance, and that were not attempting predatory practices. Because of your patience and extension that you are granting, I feel proud in honoring the regulations and rules that are set forth with a team of passionate investors or possible investors. And if I am approved to move forward, I would be so honored for you to attend the grand opening. Best wishes to you. Thank you for being a part of saving lives and implementing rules for social equity program.
Thank you. Any additional
There's
comment?
no additional comment online.
And with that, my friends, we adjourn. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your week.